Chapter 19. Your Highness, you're amazing. Jiohong Chestnut was very excited. She said with admiration, I didn't expect your Highness to take back all the shops so easily. You even made a lot of money. Of course. Sister Ling can't have taken a fancy to me, right? Yihao said proudly. At the same time, he didn't forget to tease Jiohong Chestnut. Jiohong Chestnut was only 17 or 18 years old. She had developed in all the right places. Her appearance was very pleasant, far surpassing the A-list celebrities in Yihao's previous life. Most importantly, she was kind. Even though Yihao had become stupid, she still took good care of him. This was very rare and precious. However, he was still in the body of a little kid, which made Yihao very distressed. Jiohong Chestnut's beautiful face blushed. She was flustered by Yihao's words. Suddenly, she thought of something and said, Your Highness, since you've taken back all the shops, do you want to compete for the Imperial Dragon List? Imperial Dragon List? Yihao was very curious when he heard Jiohong Chestnut's words. The Imperial Dragon List is a list of the Emperor's sons. It's divided into the business list, the martial arts list, and the talent list. It's a list to compete for the Crown Prince. The second prince has been first for 2 years in a row. If he is first again this year, the Crown Prince will be the second prince. How do the business list, martial arts list, and talent list compete? Yihao's interest was ignited. Other things aside, the Crown Prince must be his. Otherwise, he would be accused of rebellion. It was not worth it. The business list competes the average daily profit and total wealth of the Emperor's sons. The martial arts list is the prince's strength. The talent list is the competition where each prince sends 3 of his strongest subordinates to compete with each other. Jiohong Chestnut explained slowly. Did the second prince get first place in every competition? Yihao wanted to know more about the second prince's strength, so he could only get it from Jiohong Chestnut. Of course not. Although the second prince is very powerful, the first prince and the fourth prince are still not comparable to Little Sue. The second prince is only the wealthiest person in the business ranking. 2 people in the talent ranking have won. The first prince, on the other hand, is exceptionally talented. He won first place in the martial prowess rankings and second place in the talent rankings. The fourth prince won first place in the business rankings. When will the Imperial Dragon List begin? There are still 4 or 5 days left. Jiohong Chestnut looked at Yihao in embarrassment. After all, time was too short. Yihao also looked at Jiohong Chestnut speechlessly. The second prince had won first place for 2 consecutive years. This year, he would definitely do his best. There were only 4 or 5 days left. However, he did not have to worry too much. In the martial prowess rankings, he was confident that he would win first place. Since Zhao Zilong was in the talent ranking, he could just summon a few more generals. This way, he would be able to win first place in 2 competitions. The second prince would definitely not be able to become the crown prince. However, it would be difficult for him to win the business ranking. Although he had obtained more than 5 million taels of gold and some silver and copper coins today, it was still not enough to win first place. Second brother, if you win first place again this year, you will be the crown prince. The fifth prince said flatteringly. Isn't it all because of Imperial Father's favoritism? Originally, he had already agreed to make me the crown prince. Who would have thought that once that fool got good, his attitude would immediately change? And those damn ministers, they were all fence-sitters at the crucial moment. The second prince smashed his wine cup on the table, spilling all the wine. So what? As long as second brother wins first place again this time, even father will not be able to stop you from becoming the crown prince. At that time, we will teach them a lesson. The fifth prince picked up the wine pot and poured the second prince a cup, saying insidiously. The second prince drank the wine with satisfaction. This time, Uncle sent me 3 good men from the army. All of them are at the peak of rank 9 warrior. I will definitely win first place in this round. How can they compete with me? How's the money collection going? The second prince suddenly asked. Tell me quickly. Seeing that the fifth prince was hesitating, the second prince asked anxiously. I have already sent people to some families and Chamber of Commerce to borrow more than 8 million taels of gold. There are also 6 million taels of gold from my brothers. Together with your money, we have a total of 19 million taels of gold. We still need 1 million taels of gold to reach 20 million taels of gold. How is that possible? I still have 6 million taels of gold. Did you forget about the arena? The second prince asked, puzzled. This, second brother, don't be angry. I haven't told you yet. The fifth prince looked nervously at the second prince and said carefully, the servants reported that our shops were all taken back by that idiot. The second prince immediately flew into a rage. He flipped the table and asked loudly, what about the money? Take back the shops. Where's my money? It was also taken by him. Now, there is no way to get it back. Trash. All of them are trash. The second prince kicked away the palace maid who was cleaning up the shop on the floor. The palace maid's face immediately turned pale. The fifth prince waved his hand to signal her to leave. Moreover, Wang Ba and his men were also killed. Although the fifth prince was afraid of the second prince, he still clenched his teeth and told him everything. The second prince suddenly felt his vision turning black. Then his body swayed back and forth, and he almost fainted. The fifth prince quickly went forward to support him. Second brother, you are fine. Don't be angry and hurt your body. I am fine. You can leave now. The second prince sat on the chair and waved his hand as he said calmly. The fifth prince looked worriedly at the second prince and said respectfully, second brother, I will go back first. You must ensure your health. Seeing the fifth prince close the door, the second prince's eyes revealed a sinister look. Wang Ba had been his confidant for many years, and his strength was not bad. He had gathered a group of rank 1 warrior subordinates who were loyal to him and helped him take care of the forces outside the palace. He did not expect that his shops would be taken back by someone, and he would have to pay a sum of money. Even his own subordinates were killed. How could he not be angry? He had really suffered a double loss. He did not know how the other princes would laugh at him. Yi Hao, I will let you die without a burial place. The second prince's eyes revealed a strong, murderous intent. You tell uncle that if I don't become the crown prince, he will kill father when he goes to war and help me ascend the throne. The second prince seemed to have been angered silly. His tone was cold as he talked to himself. However, the black shadow in the corner had disappeared, as if it had never been there. Chapter 20. Ding! Congratulations to host for completing the quest. Fight for first place on the Imperial Dragon leaderboard. Quest reward: 1,000 resurrection points, 10 million gold, godly explosion pill, 3 random product formulas, and 1 random skill level up. If you fail the quest, everything will be cleared. Just as Yi Hao was about to reply to the 9 rainbow caltrip, a system notification rang out. Originally, he had held a nonchalant attitude, so he had no choice but to treat it with caution. If everything was really cleared, then he might as well be killed. Of course I'm going to participate, and I'm going to fight for first place, Yi Hao replied seriously. Your Highness, don't be too stressed. You've just recovered, so it's normal if you don't get a good ranking, Jiuhong Chestnut said with concern. She was afraid that Yi Hao would put too much pressure on her. As for Yi Hao saying that he wanted to take first place, 9 Rainbow Caltrip only took it as a joke and didn't take it seriously. She only knew that Yi Hao had become stronger, but it was impossible for him to beat the first prince. As for the store, there was no need to talk about it. Last year, the second prince's wealth was more than 10 million. This year, it would definitely be more. In terms of talent, only Zhao Zilong could compete. Even if he won, it wouldn't change anything. Moreover, it was hard to say if he could win. Sister Ling, how about we make a bet? Yi Hao could tell that Jiuhong Chestnut didn't believe he could get first place, so he didn't want to explain too much. A bet. Jiuhong Chestnut was confused. Yeah, if I win, you have to kiss me. How about it? Yi Hao looked at Jiuhong Chestnut and said naughtily. If Sister Ling doesn't dare to, then forget it. Yi Hao continued to provoke her. Okay, I'm not afraid of you, Jiuhong Chestnut agreed. Suddenly, her beautiful eyes turned. But what if you lose? If I lose, then I'll kiss you. Yi Hao acted like he was at a disadvantage. That won't do. If your Highness loses, How about you agree to one of my requests? Jiuhong Chestnut secretly scolded Yi Hao in his heart for being so mischievous. He was a complete pervert. However, when he thought of his own identity, his eyes darkened. Sure, Yi Hao agreed readily. He wouldn't lose anyway. After returning to the room, Yi Hao immediately summoned Shen Wansan. Shen Wansan greets master. Shen Wansan knelt on the ground and said respectfully. Since he was already used to it, Yi Hao wasn't too surprised when he summoned Shen Wansan. He summoned Shen Wansan's information. Shen Wansan age, 24 specialty, business talent. A capable of growth. Why does the system have a business talent? Yi Hao didn't understand what grade A meant. The business talent is the prerequisite for a businessman to achieve great things. The talent is divided into S, A, B, C, and D from high to low. D is a small achievement. C is a rich businessman. B is second to none. Is the richest person. S is rich enough to rival a country. That Shen Wansan was also rich enough to rival a country in his previous life. He should at least be grade S. Why is he only grade A? Yi Hao had watched Shen Wansan's TV series in his previous life. Shen Wansan's real name was Shun Fu. He carried out overseas trade and had millions of assets. His land was all over the world. There was even a rumor that he had a treasure bowl, which reflected his uncountable wealth and superb wealth-making skills. He was the lord who paid for the construction of Zhu Yuanzhang's capital city. If he didn't court death and wanted to distribute rations to Zhu Yuanzhang's troops, he wouldn't have ended up being banished to the border. No matter what, he shouldn't be grade A. Host, think carefully. Business talent is important, but luck is also indispensable. Their luck is now completely in the hands of the host. Moreover, Shen Wansan died in his previous life, so his talent wasn't fully developed. He was only grade A before he died, so there's still hope for him to grow to grade S. The system explained patiently. Yi Hao nodded to himself. Looking at the youth in front of him, he wanted to test him and see if his business talent was really that amazing. The 20 shops that were taken back included an arena, 2 restaurants, 4 medical centers, 8 clothing stores, 2 pawn shops, 2 weapon stores, and 1 jewelry store. Among them, the arena was the most profitable. However, using humans to fight beasts, Yi Hao felt that it was a little too inhumane. He didn't plan to open the arena, but the income of the other shops was too ordinary. Although the capital city of Yi had a population of 1 million, there were countless shops of all kinds. His shops didn't have an advantage. Moreover, he had empty shops now. He didn't have a single person, so he had to think of ways to recruit people. He raised the issue and discussed it with Shen Wansan. Both of them felt that if they wanted to win, they could only rely on the arena and the restaurants. These are the only 2 ways to make money quickly. As for the arena, when Yi Hao suggested that humans should fight beasts, Shen Wansan pondered for a while. He could change it from humans to beasts fighting beasts. This instantly enlightened Yi Hao. However, he was too rigid in his thinking at the beginning. Thinking about horse racing, douyu, dogfighting, and so on in his previous life, Yi Hao felt that these things didn't exist in this world. If he took them out, it would definitely cause a huge uproar. Moreover, using beasts to fight beasts was slightly acceptable to Yi Hao. As for the restaurants, there was no need to talk about them. Shen Wansan's eyes lit up when he heard about the various major cuisines in his previous life, as well as the unheard of barbecue, hot pot, and so on in this world. With Shen Wansan's talent as a businessman, he felt that if he could make these things as Master mentioned, it would definitely make this world go crazy. After arranging for Shen Wansan to rest, Yi Hao immediately summoned the system. System, can I use the resurrection points to summon a chef? It was easy for Yi Hao to talk about the cuisines in his previous life. However, if he was asked to cook, he might as well be killed. He only knew how to theorize, but he didn't know how to put into practice. Yes, what level do you want to summon? It is divided into apprentice, beginner, intermediate, advanced, and special grade. How many resurrection points are there? Yi Hao wanted to summon a special grade chef, but he still wanted to compare the prices first. In his previous life, he hadn't eaten dishes cooked by a special grade chef. It wasn't easy for him to transmigrate. No matter what, he had to enjoy it properly. Apprentice, 10 resurrection points. Beginner, 20 resurrection points. Intermediate, 30 resurrection points. Advanced, 50 resurrection points and 100 resurrection points per person. Special grade then. I'll summon one from each of the 8 major cuisines. Yi Hao gritted his teeth. It was rare for him to be a tycoon. He comforted himself. There were still more than 3,000 resurrection points, so he might as well be willful this time. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for summoning a special grade chef, Zhang Yuan. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for summoning a special grade chef, Li Tian. Ding dong, as the characters summoned have all reached special grade in their occupations, they are rewarded with the ability to impart knowledge. Impart knowledge. Can impart knowledge to ordinary people, allowing them to be promoted to apprentice, beginner, or intermediate chef. Can also change the qualifications of intermediate and advanced chefs, giving them a chance to be promoted to special grade. Chapter 21. Since these chefs weren't famous in ancient times, there were too many names. Yi Hao couldn't remember all of them and was too lazy to remember them. Since these chefs were able to bring the 8 major cuisines to this world, they could be considered the founders. Therefore, he decided to use the 8 major cuisines to name them and added the word yin in front. They quickly knelt down and thanked him. Then, he casually used identify to check their information. Yin Chuan age, 24 occupation, chef specialty, Sichuan cuisine grade, special grade skill, teaching martial strength, normal loyalty. 100 following that, Yi Hao spent another 400 resurrection points to raise their strength to the level of a peak stage martial artist. This way, they would at least have the ability to protect themselves. He believed that with the strength of a peak stage martial artist, these chefs would be able to do whatever they wanted in the country of Yi. If people knew that a person's strength had reached the peak of martial artist and that he was a chef, they would definitely be shocked. However, Yi Hao only wanted them to protect themselves. If he wanted them to fight, it would be a different matter. These 8 chefs were even weaker than Lu Xiaofeng and the others. If one of them died, Yi Hao would suffer a huge loss. After letting them rest, Yi Hao couldn't wait to summon his attributes list. Yi Hao Country. Yi Country, 10th grade kingdom, identity. Yi Country's 18th prince strength. Peak martial artist, 100 to 200 gene is considered an ordinary person. 300 gene is considered a rank 1 martial artist skill. Identify, beginner, can detect the information of a character not higher than the main character by 2 levels. Beast taming, beginner, can tame ordinary horses and wild beasts. Archery, beginner, can shoot from 100 steps away. Resurrection points, 2395 soul points, 32 reputation points, 17 military general. Zhao Zilong, peak martial artist, subordinates. 9 peak martial artist subordinates, 8 top chefs, Zhang Yang items. 300 sets of armor, city, can be constructed at level 1. Dagger, mystery pack, 1 chance to summon a military to general money. 5,785,000 taels of gold. 200,000 taels of silver, 500,000 and 10 copper coins quest. Heart of the Strong, SSS? First in the Imperial Dragon leaderboard, Yi Hao saw that there was a mystery pack among the items. Only then did he remember that it was the reward for completing the 10 battles. He immediately opened it. Ding! Congratulations on unlocking the mystery package. Ding! Congratulations on obtaining 1 pet egg, 20 beginner face changing pills, 2 teleportation talismans. Ding! Do you want to open the pet egg? Yes. Ding! Congratulations on obtaining the pet Purple Cry Pegasus. Yi Hao saw a purple horse appear in the space. The horse was much taller than an ordinary horse. The curves of its body were very perfect, as if it was wearing a thunder armor. It had an arrogant appearance. Yi Hao liked it very much. Purple Cry Pegasus can grow. Strength. Peak martial artist, he could travel 500 kilometers in a day, and his body contained a trace of the Thunder God's bloodline, which had a suppressive effect on ordinary horses. When he matured to a certain extent, he would be able to gallop on the clouds. After checking the purple cry flying horse's attributes, Yi Hao was very satisfied. He imagined himself riding on the purple cry flying horse, leading thousands of troops and horses, galloping through the battlefield. How cool would that be? If he had a little beauty in his arms, it would be even more perfect. He let go of his fantasies and continued to check. The disguise pill could change one's appearance into anyone's, including their aura. Martial warriors would not be able to see through it. Teleportation talisman could teleport to any location within a 10,000-kilometer radius. It had to be said that the system's reward was simply a must-have for killing people and traveling. In the beginning, Yi Hao was still worried about how to obtain 80% of the country's military power. In the end, this disguise pill solved his problem. However, unless it was absolutely necessary, Yi Hao did not want to use this move. System, use 2,000 resurrection points. Help me draw 20 historical generals. Yi Hao thought for a moment and said to the system, a year's time could be considered long, but it could also be considered short. He had no choice but to plan ahead. It was all thanks to the interest mission. Otherwise, he would not have been able to obtain so many resurrection points. Yi Hao was clear that the system was helping him. Therefore, Yi Hao wanted to use these resurrection points on the tip of a knife. Ding! Congratulations to host for using 2,000 resurrection points. Ding! Congratulations to host for obtaining a low-grade general. Liangshan's 108 generals. Number star Little Yuchi Sun Xing. Ding! Congratulations to host for obtaining a low-grade general. 3 Kingdoms period. Huaxiong. When Yi Hao saw that he had drawn 2 low-grade generals in a row, he could not help but feel anxious. The grades of generals were divided into peerless, upper, middle, and lower grades. However, both of them were low-grade generals in a row. This caused Yi Hao's heart to leap to his throat. Ding! Congratulations to host for obtaining a low-grade general. 3 Kingdoms period. Ding Feng. Ding! Congratulations to host for obtaining a low-grade general. 3 Kingdoms period. Zhang Bao. Ding! Congratulations to host for obtaining a high-grade general. 3 Kingdoms period. Dianwei. After drawing 7 times in a row, all of them were low-grade generals. Just as Yi Hao was about to lose all hope, the system finally drew a high-grade general. This caused him to be secretly excited. He could imagine how lucky he was to draw a high-grade general, Zhao Zilong, on his first try. Following that, Yi Hao's bad luck seemed to have disappeared. His good luck came one after another. He obtained 2 high-grade generals, 3 middle-grade generals, and 7 low-grade generals. Unfortunately, there was not a single peerless general. One could imagine how difficult it was to obtain a peerless general. Your subordinates are Dianwei, Yu Fei, Ran Min. Your subordinates are Xiahou Dun, Yang Yinzhao, Huaxiong. Your subordinates are Sun Xing, Cheng Yaojin, Ding Feng, Zhang Bao, Pan Feng, Huang Gai, Fu Yid, Sun Xianlong, Zhang Tian Yusuda, Hua Yunlong, Sun Li, Yang Lin, Lu Fang. Greetings, Master. 20 people filled the entire room. Yi Hao's face was filled with excitement. This was enough for him to kill his way into the imperial palace. If he entered and exited 7 times, no one would be able to stop him. However, Yi Hao would not do that. After all, Yi Batian, his father, had treated him quite well. Since he cannot do that, Yi Hao could only find another way out. He believed that with these subordinates, he would definitely be able to conquer the world. 2 days ago, Yi Hao was still alone. But now, there were so many famous generals accompanying him. Yi Hao's heart was filled with an indescribable excitement. However, there was no one to talk to, so he could only hide it in his heart. Sun Xian, Ding Feng, Zhang Bao, Fu Yud, Sun Xianlong. Yi Hao exhaled and consecutively called out the names of 5 generals. Your subordinates are here. The 5 stepped forward and respectfully knelt on the ground, waiting for Yi Hao's orders. Yi Hao walked forward and whispered in the ears of the 5 generals. Then, he gave each of them a pill and 10,000 taels of gold. Your subordinates will definitely complete the mission. The 5 of them put away the pills. Yi Hao walked to the window and opened it. Because it was already late at night, it was very quiet outside. There was not even a shadow. However, Yi Hao's eyes stopped at a corner for a second. Chapter 22. Move quickly. After that, we'll set off immediately. Yi Hao said softly. His tone was cold, but there was also a trace of unspeakable reluctance. The few of them nodded solemnly. They picked up their weapons and walked towards the window. They jumped out easily without making a single sound. Be careful. If you can't handle it, retreat. Yi Hao looked at the backs of the few of them and reminded them. Third brother, it's already midnight. Let's go back. What's there to guard here for? There were 7 or 8 people squatting in the corner opposite the restaurant. One of them yawned and complained. Are you King tired of living? The second prince asked us to keep an eye on you 24 hours a day. The burly man called Third Brother slapped the head of the person who spoke. Third Brother, the window is open. Quick, keep an eye on it. Third Brother said anxiously. His eyes were carefully looking at Yi Hao's window. Friends, what are you doing here in the middle of the night instead of sleeping? At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded behind them. Third Brother and the rest of the human spirits were almost scared out of their wits. Third Brother turned around and was about to curse. He was about to raise his hand when he saw 5 young men standing behind him. They were all holding weapons in their hands. Third Brother panicked and put down his raised hand. He cursed in his heart. Before he could say anything, the other party had already made their move. Third Brother didn't even have time to react. A spear had already pierced his throat. He could only watch as his blood spurted out. He realized that he couldn't say anything. The 5 murderous gods in front of him had already disappeared. Even until his death, he couldn't understand how the 5 of them appeared. They didn't even have the strength to fight back. Zhang Tianyu, Su De, Hua Yunlong, Sun Li, Yang Lin. In the hotel, Yi Hao saw the backs of Zhang Bao and the rest disappear. He closed the window and continued to light the soldiers. It was as if nothing had happened. Your subordinates are here. The 5 of them also took a step forward and knelt on the ground, waiting for orders. Just like before, Yi Hao whispered his instructions into everyone's ears and gave each of them a pill and 10,000 taels of gold. The 5 generals also jumped out of the window and ran in different directions to complete the mission Yi Hao had given them. Their loyalty made them obey Yi Hao's orders unconditionally, even if it meant sacrificing their lives. If others were to see this room full of generals obediently listening to the orders of a 9-year-old child, they would definitely go crazy. If the second prince were to see this scene, would he still dare to fight with Yi Hao for the throne? However, Yi Hao did not dare to be careless. After all, the second prince still had a few troops under his command. After all, even a good tiger could not defeat a pack of wolves. However, as long as everything went smoothly, everything would be fine. Sun Xan. Yi Hao looked at the remaining 10 people and thought for a moment before calling out to little Yuchi Sun Xan. This person was ranked 100th out of the 108 generals. However, when he was summoned to this world, his martial strength was about the same. They were all at the peak of martial artists. Yi Hao did not know how the system divided the ranks, but in his impression, Yu Fei was definitely someone he worshipped. However, he was only a high-grade general. As for Sun Xian, his fighting skills might be lacking, but he could definitely squeeze into the top 10 in the country of Yi. Yi Hao did not know that no matter how bad one's fighting skills were, or how bad one's comprehension was, their rank was still there. The peak of martial artists had an absolute advantage over those below their realm. Furthermore, being a low-grade martial artist was not bad. Furthermore, there was a chance for their rank to increase. Furthermore, half of the 10 generals of the country of Yi were either ordinary or peak 9th rank martial artists. They were not peak 10th rank martial artists. As for Yi Hao's subordinates, including Lu Xiaofeng and the others, they were all peak 10th rank martial artists. Your subordinate is here. Master, please give your orders. Sun Xian half knelt on the ground with a whip in his hand. Yi Hao realized that although these people were summoned by him, and the system had erased their memories of their previous lives, they still carried the spirit of the underworld. This could be because the system had preserved their personalities from their previous lives. Sun Xian, do you know how to gamble? This was because the gambling industry in this world had not flourished yet. There were only bets for various competitions. In his previous life, because Sun Xin loved the bloodshed of the underworld, he had opened a casino with Gudaseo. Moreover, he was a ruthless character. However, he was chivalrous and courageous. Basically, he was involved in both the underworld and the underworld. However, after being summoned, Yihao could not determine if he still had any memories of gambling. I can't hide anything from Master. When your subordinate was bored, he did research on these things. However, he did not have the opportunity to do so. Sun Xion's face revealed a trace of surprise, but it immediately turned into worship. He did not expect his master to be so omnipotent. Nothing could be hidden from him. Haha, that's great. Yihao's face revealed a trace of joy. He did not expect Sun Xin to have memories of gambling. It was just that the system had used another method to store the memories in his mind. However, now was not the time to gamble. He was too weak now. When the time came, most of the benefits would be taken away by others. This was not like a restaurant where the chef was in his hands and others could only stare at him. As for things like gambling, only those who were willing to watch it a few times would be able to learn it immediately. Hence, it was not the time to do this. We'll talk about this later. Yihao asked everyone to sit down. After all, they had been standing for half a day. Fortunately, there were enough chairs in the room. I have a task for you now. Master, please speak. Sitting on the chairs, everyone focused on Yihao. In their hearts, Yihao was the sky. Yihao felt a little satisfied. Tomorrow morning, think of a way to get close to the Crown Prince. You must gain his trust. After that, you don't have to do anything else. This subordinate understands. Although he did not know why he was being asked to get close to the Crown Prince, Sun Xin still obeyed. Huanggai, the fourth prince, likes archery. The Imperial Dragon ranking is about to start. Tomorrow, he will definitely go to the forest in the north to hunt. Your task is the same as Sun Xion's. Get close to the fourth prince and gain his trust. Huanggai was good at training soldiers. However, he only had these generals in his hands. None of them were willing to submit to anyone who did not know how to train soldiers. He could only use them to be the fourth prince's spy. Yes, master. Huanggai nodded in agreement. Right. Can you change the way you address me in the future? I'm not used to it. Yihao pulled a long face and complained. How about your highness in the chaotic world? Cheng Yaojin had been holding it in for a long time. He had not been able to open his mouth for a long time. He was really uncomfortable. However, he did not dare to open his mouth and immediately ran out to make his presence known. Yihao rolled his eyes. Did you think everyone was as funny as you, giving yourself the title of Demon King in the chaotic world? Chapter 23. Don't mess around. Master is going to inherit the throne in the future. How can you call him a scoundrel? Yu Fei lectured. Cheng Yaojin had no choice but to shut up. Yihao knew what kind of person Cheng Yaojin was, so he didn't take it to heart. Brother Yu, do you have any suggestions? Yihao didn't put on airs at all. He respected them. After all, they were the heroes of Huaxia. Now that they were dead, they were summoned to work for him. This little bit of respect was nothing. In my opinion, you should call him His Highness when there's someone around, and Young Emperor when there's no one around. Yu Fei was very touched. Young Emperor wasn't a bad name. It sounded better than Master or His Highness. It was also domineering. Yihao muttered these two words. Lu Feng, you're the same as them. You're close to the third prince, but you have to be careful. The third prince isn't simple. Yihao warned. Enemies like the second prince weren't scary. The scariest ones were those who watched from the sidelines and controlled the situation at the same time. He felt that the third prince was very scheming, but he was very good at hiding. Lu Feng kept Yihao's words in mind. There were so many people working for Young Emperor. If he made a mistake, it would be embarrassing. Moreover, everyone was starting from the same starting point. This was a chance to prove himself. What about me, Young Emperor? I don't have a mission yet. Cheng Yaojin asked anxiously. He was afraid that Yihao would leave him out. You're funny. You're smart. You're in charge of getting close to the fifth prince. You have to gain his trust. At the same time, you have to introduce Hua Xiong to him and make him greedy. Through him, you can recommend Hua Xiong to father and gain control of the royal guards. This fifth prince had always been targeting him. One must know that Yi Hao was someone who held grudges. However, it would be meaningless to directly trample someone to death. Yi Hao wanted to raise him to a very, very high position, and then let him fall into the bottomless abyss. That would be satisfying. I'll definitely complete the mission. When the time comes, give me more rewards. Cheng Yaojin was very happy to be praised by Yi Hao, but he did not forget to reward her. He rubbed his palms with stars in his eyes. Everyone was too embarrassed to look at Cheng Yaojin. Yi Hao knew his character was like this, but he still reminded him, "Brothers, you are all older than me, Yi Hao. I don't have the right to make you generals now, but sooner or later, I will make you ministers." "Thank you, young emperor. Long live the young emperor. We will definitely contribute to the young emperor's cause and achieve the emperor's legacy." More than 10 people were very moved. They all knelt on the ground and swore their hearts. Yi Hao smiled with satisfaction. This was the feeling he wanted. He wanted them to have a goal and not become killing machines because of the shackles of the system. "Xiahou Dun, Yang Yinzhao, you will join Prime Minister Li's residence and the rearguard commandery respectively. You have to gain their trust and control their troops." These people had a reasonable identity. They were all righteous men of the pugilistic world without any background. No one would be able to find out that they were Yi Hao's men. With their strength, Yi Hao believed that they would definitely gain the trust of the rearguard commandery. With this arrangement, all the troops in the entire Yi country would be under Yi Hao's control. In that case, he would be able to complete the mission of obtaining the heart of an expert. It was fine if he didn't make any moves, but as long as Yi Hao was in control, the entire Yi country would fall into his hands within a year. "My good brothers, your lives are in your hands. If you insist on courting death, don't blame me for being merciless." Looking in the direction of the palace, Yi Hao's eyes flashed with a trace of determination. All the mid-ranked and low-ranked generals have been assigned tasks. In the blink of an eye, only 3 high-ranked generals remained out of the original 20. They were Dianwei of the Ancients, Yu Fei, who was loyal to his country, and Ran Min, who was once an emperor. Yi Hao took out a map that he had bought during the day. He pointed at a very small area on the map. This was the country of Yi. The country of Yi had 13 cities, 1 capital, and over 200,000 soldiers and horses. To the south was the country of Zhao, which was on par with the country of Yi in terms of strength, but had a stronger army. However, the east, west, and north didn't have any large countries. They were all wild powers, commonly known as wild countries. Because they didn't have 10 cities, they couldn't be conferred as a country. These wild countries were innumerable on the 10,000 kingdoms continent, numbering in the hundreds of thousands. Countless wild countries were born every day, and countless wild countries were destroyed every day. Most of them relied on small countries like the country of Yi to survive. The country of Yi was only a 10th-ranked duchy. Any 9th-ranked kingdom could easily destroy a small country like the country of Yi. This was something that Yi Hao had heard during the day. As for stronger existences, they weren't something that a small country like the country of Yi could come into contact with. "Dianwei, you're in charge of the West. Attack a city first, then quickly recruit soldiers and horses, accumulate food, and expand our forces." Yi Hao took out 1,500,000 taels of gold and handed it to Dianwei. "Take out 1,000,000 taels of gold to buy food." Yi Hao understood that the ratio of money in this world was 1 tael of gold equals 10 taels of silver equals 1,000 copper coins. The price of food in this world was around 600 copper coins per dan, and 1 dan was 50 kilograms. This meant that 1,000,000 taels of gold could buy 1,600,000 dan of food. A soldier could eat at least 1 jin of grain a day. An army of 100,000 people could eat 100 dan of grain a day. That would be 36,500 dan of grain a year. An army of 1,000,000 people would need 365,000 dan of grain. This amount of food was enough for an army of 1,000,000 people to consume for 5 years. The 3 of them were shocked, but they were more excited. Which man didn't want to make a name for themselves and fight on the battlefield? They could see that Yi Hao was very ambitious. Otherwise, why would he buy so much food? He was only a 9-year-old child, but he had such great ambitions. Why would he have to worry about not establishing an empire in the future? Yu Fei, head to the east. Ram In, head to the north. Yi Hao also gave each of them 1,500,000 taels of gold. He knew that no matter the time, food was the most important. With food, there would be an army. Otherwise, how could they recruit soldiers for war? 10,000 kingdoms continent. In the future, I will definitely plant my flag on all the city walls. All the countries will either submit or be destroyed. Yi Hao made up his mind. As long as he had the system, he believed that he would succeed sooner or later. Yi Hao originally wanted to help them summon a few more subordinates, but when he saw that there were only 300 people left at the resurrection point, he could only give up. He hoped that they would have a smooth journey. Chapter 24. Early the next morning, Yi Hao was helped out of bed by Jiuhong Chestnut. Yi Hao's little face was full of sleepiness. He was sleepy and kept yawning. "Your Highness, didn't you rest well last night?" Jiuhong Chestnut helped Yi Hao tidy up his clothes and asked with concern. "Yes." Yi Hao nodded. He was busy until midnight last night and only slept for a few hours. "Your Highness, why don't you sleep a little longer?" Jiuhong Chestnut knew how uncomfortable it was for a child to not sleep enough and said with concern, "No need. I still have something to do today." Yi Hao shook his head. There were only a few days left. The Imperial Dragon ranking was about to begin. He had to increase the average profit of the store. Moreover, according to the system, if he made any achievements in any aspect, he would be able to obtain prestige. He had spent a lot of money for the restaurant. Success or failure depended on this. However, Yi Hao was still very confident. With 8 special grade chefs in charge, even if the restaurant's business didn't explode, no one would be able to say it out loud. Early in the morning, everyone was busy. Because there was not enough manpower, Yi Hao spent 20 resurrection points and summoned 20 ordinary people. These people were the most suitable to work. After all, it was not easy to find people in such a short period of time. The 8 chefs each wrote a dozen dishes and then sent people to buy them. At this time, Shen Wansan came over with a dozen people. Yi Hao was puzzled. Shen Wansan asked the chefs to make the dishes and then asked the dozen people to draw. Yi Hao then understood that Shen Wansan was asking them to draw the recipes. Not to mention that this smart businessman was different. Yi Hao almost forgot about the recipes. Of course, these chefs only made simple dishes. It was only a drop in the ocean of what they knew, but it was enough. Yi Hao didn't see the dozen people who were wiping their saliva and drawing. They had never seen or heard of these dishes. They didn't expect that the dishes they usually ate could be made like this. The plate was simply a work of art. They didn't want to destroy it, but the tempting aroma made them salivate. These dozen painters were going through the most difficult time of their lives. They had to concentrate on drawing while wiping their saliva. "Your Highness, where did you find such a divine chef? He's definitely better than the imperial chefs in the palace." Jiu Hongling was also swallowing her saliva with a look of awe, but his tone was full of admiration. His Highness was simply too handsome. He actually found 8 divine chefs who were willing to cook here. "All right, everyone, stop drawing. Let's eat first and then draw." Yi Hao looked at the room full of foodies. No one could work seriously. Even Zhao Zilong, who was holding a book in his hand, kept staring at the dishes. His saliva almost dripped onto the book. Clatter. Everyone sprinted to their seats as fast as they could. Yi Hao walked over speechlessly. Everyone looked at Yi Hao expectantly. If Yi Hao didn't touch his chopsticks, they wouldn't dare to. "Let's all eat," Yi Hao said. At first, no one dared to be too presumptuous. After a few bites, they slowly snatched the food. The sound of plates clattering could be heard everywhere. Yi Hao picked up a piece of spicy boiled fish. Before it reached his mouth, the aroma hit his nose. He put it into his mouth. The bones of the fish were perfectly removed. The fish melted in his mouth. It was too delicious. It was worlds apart from the spicy boiled fish he ate in his previous life. Was this still an ordinary fish? It was simply an immortal dish. Yi Hao was about to pick up a second piece when he realized that everyone was looking at him expectantly. Yi Hao was stunned. Was there something on his face? Yi Hao then realized that all the plates on the table had been licked clean. The soup of the spicy boiled fish had been drunk. Yi Hao slapped his forehead. He had no choice but to order the 8 chefs to continue cooking. Originally, everyone had eaten breakfast. But now, everyone was wolfing down the food as if they hadn't eaten for 3 days. They didn't even use their chopsticks to serve the food. They used their hands. Jiuhong Chestnut also showed his gluttonous nature. However, he couldn't win against Zhao Zilong and Lu Xiaofeng. When Yi Hao saw Jiuhong Chestnut's anxious expression, he had no choice but to order the chefs to prepare another table of dishes and send them to his room. He wasn't full either. However, he was still a prince. How could he snatch food from his subordinates? When Jiuhong Chestnut heard this, he immediately laughed heartily. His pretty face was full of smiles. At the same time, he looked at Zhao Zilong and the others as if he was the victor. Zhao Zilong and the others were full of resentment. However, without Yi Hao around, they were even more open. Zhao Zilong wanted to use force to threaten them, but it was useless. He could only continue to snatch food with resentment. They could have finished the work in the morning, but they didn't do anything. They ate until the afternoon. Their stomachs were about to burst. Fortunately, they didn't drink, so they could continue working in the afternoon. Shin Wansan ordered the servants to write a bunch of flyers similar to the ones in his previous life. He ordered them to distribute them on the streets. He also used Yi Hao's identity to send invitations to some aristocratic families and dignitaries. Finally, they finished dozens of recipes in the afternoon. Needless to say, these people's drawing skills were really good. They drew each dish very vividly. Yi Hao wanted to pay them, but they didn't want it. They only wanted to eat another meal. Yi Hao laughed. Everyone, if you want to eat, stay and let me use it. You can eat whenever you want in the future. Thank you, Your Highness. May Your Highness live for thousands of years. The dozens of artists knew Yi Hao's identity. They were more than happy to have Yi Hao let them stay. After eating these dishes, they thought about the dishes in the past. They felt like wax. Then you guys can continue to draw recipes. There was no other work for them to do, so Yi Hao ordered them to continue drawing recipes. For a moment, everyone in the capital had their eyes on Yi Hao. A foolish prince suddenly recovered. There were even rumors that he caused a phenomenon. However, these were all ignored. On the first day, he used force to intimidate the Zhao country's emissary. As for Yi Hao's plan, only the officials in the imperial court knew about it. Yi Batian had issued a gag order, so outsiders didn't know about it. On the second day, he challenged 10 wild beasts in a row. Many people spread the news. He also used ruthless means to take back his shop. The second prince, who suffered the most losses, didn't show up. Some people guessed that the second prince might have given in. On the third day, he opened a restaurant. So be it. Wasn't it just a restaurant? What was there to make a fuss about? In the end, he caused a ruckus in the capital. Everyone knew about it. However, most people didn't take it to heart. These officials and nobles had eaten everything in the capital. How could a brat like you find a good chef? The best chefs in Yi country were either in the Imperial Palace or in the Nine Heavens restaurant. It was said that the Nine Heavens restaurant didn't belong to Yi country. It was a restaurant opened by a big power in Yi country. It could be said that they squandered money like water. Even the imperial family didn't dare to provoke them. The Nine Heavens restaurant wasn't opened in a country. It was only opened in places like Yi country. Chapter 25. However, most people still wanted to go to Yi Hao's restaurant. Of course, it wasn't to eat, but to get to know Yi Hao better. After all, he was still a prince. What if he became a crown prince one day? Moreover, it was said that Yi Batian doted on Yi Hao the most. They might even go and support Yi Hao. The officials wanted to leave a good impression on the Yi Batian and Yi Hao. As for the aristocratic families, they wanted to stay in Yi country and spend some money to eat a meal. It wasn't a loss to befriend a prince who might become the crown prince. The news naturally reached the second prince's ears. The second prince sneered in disdain. He thought that these people really didn't know what was good for them. Could it be that they could just find 2 random people to open a restaurant? Moreover, how could he let go of this opportunity to humiliate Yi Hao? Men, the second prince shouted. A guard immediately opened the door and entered. Tell Kong, Lu to pack up tomorrow and accompany me to Yi Hao's restaurant. Seeing the guard leave, the second prince smiled proudly. Kong Lu was a chef that he had spent a lot of money to nurture. He had sent Kong Lu to the Ninth Heaven restaurant to learn. Now, Kong Li's culinary skills were very good. He wasn't any worse than the imperial chefs in the palace. When Yi Batian tasted Kong Li's dishes, he couldn't stop praising them. Kong Lu was the most important signature of his Imperial Peak Pavilion. Although it couldn't be compared to the Ninth Heaven restaurant, he was definitely one of the top chefs in the capital city. However, he was a little puzzled. Why didn't the fifth prince come today? Normally, he would come early in the morning to greet him like a dog. Now that it's almost nighttime, I haven't seen him at all. This was all thanks to Yi Hao. Early in the morning, the fifth prince went out of the palace for a stroll. He wanted to buy some things to please the second prince. However, he didn't expect to meet a dirty beggar who wanted to rob him. The fifth prince ordered his subordinates to teach him a lesson. No matter what, his subordinates were still guards of the imperial palace. In the end, they were no match for the silly beggar. This made the fifth prince dumbfounded. Since when are beggars so powerful? The fifth prince had some suspicions. Was there someone who wanted to harm him? However, he immediately tossed this thought to the back of his mind. Even the Yi country didn't have many experts of this caliber. Was there a need to mobilize such an expert just to harm him? Thinking of this, the fifth prince's blood boiled. If he could take this beggar as his subordinate, then he wouldn't have to fawn over the second prince every day just to protect himself. However, he was still very cautious. It turned out that this beggar had been brought up the mountain to learn martial arts when he was 3 years old. Now, he and his senior brother had gone down the mountain to explore the Jianghu. However, the two of them found that their martial arts were useless. They were only a little stronger than ordinary people. When the fifth prince saw the beggar's country bumpkin aura, he believed the beggar's words and promised him many benefits. At the same time, he revealed his identity. Sure enough, the beggar was immediately grateful and wanted to become his subordinate. "All right, what's your name?" The fifth prince looked at the beggar in front of him with satisfaction. He thought to himself that he had really picked up a treasure today. With a little bit of trickery, this beggar would definitely die for him. "I'm called Cheng Yaojin." Cheng Yaojin held his axe and pretended to be an honest country bumpkin. "All right, I heard you say that you have a senior brother." The fifth prince probed. He thought that since Cheng Yaojin was so powerful, his senior brother would definitely not be weak. If he could subdue him, he would definitely be his right-hand man in the future. "Yes, fifth prince, I wonder." Cheng Yaojin hesitated. "What's wrong?" The fifth prince couldn't wait to take Cheng Yaojin's senior brother under his wing. However, when he saw Cheng Yaojin's hesitation, a trace of doubt appeared on his face. "Could something have happened? Your Highness, if you take me as your subordinate, I wonder if you can take my senior brother as well. I told him before that we would share blessings and hardships together." Cheng Yaojin said embarrassedly. His tone was filled with longing, hoping that the fifth prince would take his senior brother under his wing. Ha! It was really a case of searching high and low only to find it by chance. The fifth prince felt that his spring had come. Although he was ecstatic, he still pondered for a while before nodding his head in agreement. Seeing that Cheng Yaojin was even more grateful to him, the fifth prince asked Cheng Yaojin to bring his senior brother over immediately. After seeing Hua Xiong, the fifth prince could tell at a glance that Hua Xiong was definitely an expert. He immediately showed his respect for the wise. After some persuasion from Cheng Yaojin, Hua Xiong finally agreed to submit to him. How could the fifth prince let go of this opportunity to win over 2 experts in one go? He gritted his teeth and decided to pay a huge price this time. He brought Hua Xiong Cheng Yaojin with him to the ninth heaven. The three of them drank and chatted, calling each other brothers. Although the fifth prince had let down his guard, he still kept trying to get information from the two of them while drinking. As for Cheng Yaojin and Hua Xiong, although they were drunk, their brains weren't muddled. Their clever answers finally made the fifth prince completely let down his guard and treat them as his confidants. Hua Xiong and Cheng Yaojin looked at each other and revealed a faint smile. However, the fifth prince didn't see it at all. "Your Highness, as a prince, how come your subordinates are all trash? They can't even take a single blow from me." Cheng Yaojin asked, puzzled. The subordinates were embarrassed by Cheng Yaojin's words, but they didn't dare to refute. Yaojin, you don't know. As he had let down his guard, the fifth prince poured out all his bitterness, showing that he was living in an abyss of suffering. He buried the injustice of his father, the hatred of the second prince, and the discomfort of his brothers. If it weren't for these two brothers today, I don't know when I would have been able to make it, the fifth prince said with a tone of relief. Your Highness, what are you going to do in the future? Cheng Yaojin asked patiently. What can I do in the future? They all have troops in their hands, and I only have you two brothers. It's good enough that I can keep my life. It's just that it's hard for you two brothers. Being asked by Cheng Yaojin, the fifth prince looked sad and helpless. Your Highness, what if we have troops? Cheng Yaojin's eyes had a trace of disdain. You want to joke with Xiao Di? You're almost 20 years old. I gave you 2 experts, but you're still so useless. You still need me to teach you what to do? Oh! Hearing Cheng Yaojin's words, the fifth prince's eyes lit up. Yaojin, you have an idea. Your Highness, I wonder if we can start with the troops we have now. Cheng Yaojin didn't directly ask for Hua Xiong to join the royal guards. That would definitely arouse the fifth prince's suspicion. Haha, that's impossible. The troops we have now are all the confidants of the first prince, the second prince, the third prince, and the fourth prince. We have no chance at all. The remaining neutral troops are sly. It's even more impossible. Chapter 26. Forget it. Let's continue drinking. The fifth prince picked up his wine glass and said with disappointment, No, Your Highness, we still have a chance. Cheng Yaojin pretended to be thinking and continued. Junior brother, His Highness said that there are only a few troops in Yi. Unless we can obtain the authority of the royal guards, Hua Xiong said casually. The speaker spoke casually, but the listener listened attentively. The moment this thought appeared, it started to sprout and grow in the fifth prince's heart. Looking at the fifth prince's thoughtful expression, Cheng Yaojin knew that he was close to succeeding. Your Highness, my senior brother is right. There is still the royal guards. The fifth prince put down his wine glass and rubbed his chin with his left hand. He stood up and walked to the window. He looked at the bustling capital city and the majestic palace in the distance. He then looked at Cheng Yaojin and Hua Xiong and remained silent for a long time. He was also thinking if he should fight. Initially, when the two of them did not appear, the fifth prince only wanted to keep his life. That was why he sought refuge from the second prince, who had the most power. But now that he had 2 experts, he was not willing to live like this. Cheng Yaojin and Hua Xiong sat there quietly, waiting for the fifth prince's decision. This is an opportunity given to me by the heavens. If I don't seize it, I will be letting the heavens down. The fifth prince clenched his fist and closed the window. He felt that this was an opportunity given to him by the heavens. Why was it that even though they were all princes, they could fight for the throne while he had to wag his tail and beg like a dog? Why did they all have troops under their command while he didn't? Yaojin, you're right. But can we really control the royal guards? The fifth prince was still worried, but he was also filled with desire. If he really succeeded, he might really be able to get the throne. Although the imperial army was only 30,000 people, it was definitely comparable to an army of 100,000 people. However, the imperial army was in the hands of his imperial father. Wanting to gain control of the imperial army was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Your Highness, my senior brother is at the peak of martial artist level 10. It is hard to find a match for him in the same level. Although my martial arts are on par with him, I was defeated by him, Cheng Yaojin said honestly. This was because even before he came to look for the fifth prince, Cheng Yaojin was already unconvinced by Hua Xiong. In the end, after hundreds of rounds, he was still inferior and lost to Hua Xiong. He could not help but admire Xiao Di in his heart. At such a young age, he was already so strategic and had such a keen eye. He could tell who was stronger and who was weaker at a glance. This was something that the fifth prince, who bullied the weak and feared the strong, could not compare to. If Yao knew what Cheng Yaojin was thinking, he would definitely laugh out loud. You were all summoned by me. If I didn't know who was stronger and who was weaker, then wouldn't that be the end of it? Besides, I still have my appraisal skill. However, this was all a secret, and no one could possibly know. That was why Zhao Zilong was surprised by Yi Hao's strength. Chung Yaojin was surprised by Yi Hao's foresight and strategy. So powerful. The fifth prince secretly clicked his tongue. If what Chung Yaojin said was true, then in the entire Yi country, there were not many people who could be a match for these two. Although the generals of Yi country were all at the pinnacle of martial artists, most of them were at the 9th rank of martial artists or at the beginning of the 10th rank of martial artists. He guessed the strength of these two and thought that they would be at most at the 8th or 9th rank. He did not expect them to be at the pinnacle of the 10th rank. Furthermore, Hua Xiong did not have many opponents at the same rank as him. Did that mean that even the commander of the royal guards would not be a match for him? Then when I go back, I will recommend the two of you to my father. The fifth prince decided. No. Chung Yaojin immediately stopped him, thinking that this fifth prince was really brainless. Your Highness, my senior brother alone is enough. If there are two of us, it will definitely arouse your father's suspicion. At that time, it would be harder to succeed. And I can stay by your Highness's side to protect your safety and train these useless people at the same time. After hearing Chung Yaojin's words, the fifth prince also felt that it was reasonable. Furthermore, Chung Yaojin was willing to help him train his guards, which made him even more satisfied. It seemed that these two people were really thinking for him. After the matter was decided, the fifth prince felt refreshed. His future was filled with hope. At the same time, a person appeared in his mind. You fool. So what if you have recovered? So what if you have my father's favor? Can you get two experts? See how this prince will find an opportunity to deal with you. The more the fifth prince thought about it, the happier he was. The three of them toasted each other. Yawn. Yi Hao, who was busy in the restaurant, yawned. Who was talking about me? After working for an entire day, he finally finished tidying up one of the restaurants. As for the other one, there was no time at all. Moreover, Yi Hao did not want to separate the chefs of the 8 major cuisines. He wanted to make China's 8 major cuisines famous. As for the signboard of the restaurant, Yi Hao also changed the name of the restaurant to Yanwang Restaurant. In the afternoon, Shan Wansan suggested that it was not suitable to use these male waiters. If they were replaced with female waiters, it would be more distinctive. Yi Hao gritted his teeth and summoned another 20 female waiters from the system. As for the tables and chairs in the restaurant, Yi Hao did not plan to change them because there was not enough time. Yanwang Restaurant had 3 floors. The 3rd floor was for accommodation, the 2nd floor was for private rooms, and the 1st floor was for the main hall. The space was not too small. The 1st floor could accommodate 40 to 50 tables. The price of the menu was also decided. After everyone's discussion, the dishes were 10 to 20 times more expensive than other restaurants. Some dishes were even as expensive as 9th Heaven. However, no one objected. They felt that the dishes were definitely worth the price. Some of the painters even felt that the dishes were cheap. Those painters were all famous painters in the capital city. They usually painted for officials and nobles or people from big families. Although 9th Heaven was expensive, there were still people who had been there before. They felt that 9th Heaven's dishes could not be compared to Yanwang restaurants. In the past, when they ate 9th Heaven's dishes, they felt that they were delicacies of the mortal world. Now, when they ate Yanwang restaurant's dishes, they felt that they were the best in the world of immortals. 9th Heaven's dishes were trash. After a busy day, Yi Hao ordered the chefs to cook a bunch of dishes for everyone to eat. Everyone felt that this was the greatest gift. Although they were already full from lunch and felt that they did not need to eat for dinner, once the dishes were placed on the table, they immediately fell hungry. Everyone started to fight over the food again. They were willing to eat until they died. Including the 40 ordinary waiters, the number of people had almost reached 70. Even with 8 chefs cooking together, they still could not keep up with the pace. You guys go and help. Yi Hao pointed to a table of 10 ordinary men. The 10 of them quickly swept away the dishes on the table and walked to the kitchen with resentful eyes. As expected, their speed was increased. Ding! Summon character. Li Dan has activated the chef profession. He is now a beginner chef of Sichuan cuisine. Chapter 27. In his mind, he suddenly heard the system notification. Yi Hao was stunned and immediately opened the system to check. Only then did he remember that this was the exclusive skill of the 8 chefs. Teach. And this Li Dan Dan was the ordinary person he summoned. He should be one of the 10 chefs that he asked to help in the kitchen just now. He didn't expect that he would learn cooking by accident. Li Dan Dan age, 23 occupation, beginner Sichuan chef strength, ordinary person loyalty, 100 instinct, summon character. Li Dan Dan has triggered the chef occupation and become a Cantonese chef. Congratulations to the host for gaining 10 reputation points. Ding. Summon character. Li Dan Dan has triggered the chef occupation and become a Hunan chef. Congratulations to the host for gaining 10 reputation points. For a moment, the system notification kept ringing. When he checked the system, all 10 chefs had learned cooking and became beginner chefs. There was even one who became an intermediate chef, giving him 15 reputation points. Isn't this teaching skill too powerful? Yi Hao was surprised and excited. How long had it been? Everyone had learned cooking. Yi Hao realized that this was a good way to increase his reputation points. But more than that, he was worried. These 10 chefs were all summoned by him and learned cooking. Yi Hao was very happy. But if outsiders saw it, wouldn't the culinary skills be stolen? Host, don't worry. The teaching skill must be taught by the person who taught it. If they're not willing to teach, it will be very difficult to learn cooking. And because they are all from the chaos realm, they can learn so quickly. If they are from this world, they will have to learn one dish at a time. The system seemed to know what Yi Hao was worried about and explained. Yi Hao was relieved. This kind of cooking skill could only be in his hands. After all, this was a treasure bowl that could make him endless money. Not to mention the future. What he lacked most now was money. Yi Hao wanted to try the cooking skills of the beginner chefs, so he let the 8 chefs rest and let the ordinary people cook a few dishes. Everyone looked at Yi Hao blankly. Why did he suddenly ask the servants to cook? Could it be that they ate too much and made His Highness unhappy? Everyone was puzzled, but Yi Hao did not explain. After a while, a few of his subordinates brought the dishes to the table. Everyone was shocked, and the way they looked at Yi Hao changed. His Highness was too amazing. Where did he find so many chefs? Moreover, they did not reveal anything. At first, he really thought that these people were servants, who knew that they could cook so well. The aroma of the dishes on the table assailed their nostrils. Although they couldn't be compared with the chefs, they were still outstanding. With this kind of craftsmanship, any one of them would be a chef that others would fight over. However, Yi Hao actually asked them to be waiters. This was too willful. The most surprised people here were the artists and Jiuhong Chestnut. Jiuhong Chestnut was a little better. Yi Hao had changed so much in the past 2 days that she was a little numb. But Yi Hao's subordinates were full of talents. If she had not been accompanying His Highness all these years, Jiuhong Chestnut would have suspected that His Highness was pretending to be stupid all these years. The artists had doubts about the rumors. They all said that the 18th prince was a fool. But where did this group of talents come from? Either the rumors were wrong, or the 18th prince was too good at enduring. The artists looked at Yi Hao in a different way. There was a trace of admiration in their eyes. Moreover, Yi Hao's behavior was not like a 9-year-old child. He was even calmer than an adult. Lu Xiaofeng, Zhao Zilong, and the others did not care about this. They only knew that they had to obey His Highness. Everything else was not important. Try it. See how it tastes. Yi Hao felt very unnatural when he saw a group of hot eyes staring at him. Yi Hao was too lazy to care about what they were thinking because there was no way to explain it. It was better to save himself the trouble. Although these dishes looked good, and Yi Hao believed in the power of the system, the level of these beginner chefs should also be good. He still could not help but want to try. Yi Hao took a bite of each dish and frowned slightly. It was because it was far from the level of those special chefs. However, the taste was very good. It was better than the food he had eaten in his previous life. After Yi Hao tasted, Zhao Zilong was the first to eat. Then, Jiuhong Chestnut, Lu Xiaofeng, and the artists. Master, although the taste is not as good as the 8 great chefs, it is already the best dish I have ever eaten. Zhao Zilong was the first to comment. Sister Ling, what do you think? Yi Hao nodded and continued to ask Jiuhong Chestnut. I also feel that it is much better than the food in the palace. Jiuhong Chestnut did not expect Yi Hao to ask her. She blushed and said the answer in her heart. Hearing Jiuhong Chestnut's answer, Yi Hao heaved a sigh of relief. After all, he was not opening a restaurant. That would be too bad. He wanted to spread Chinese cuisine all over the world. He was not willing to hire all the special chefs. Since these beginner chefs could already make such delicious dishes, then the business should not be bad. Most importantly, these dishes were all unheard of in this world. Yi Hao felt that he had profited greatly this time. These 8 special chefs all had the teaching skill. Wouldn't that mean that he could have countless beginner and intermediate chefs? The taste is not bad. Although it is not as good as the Ninth Heaven restaurant, it is not bad. An old artist slowly savored the dishes in front of him and muttered softly. Elderly, what is the Ninth Heaven restaurant that you mentioned? This artist was the most experienced among the dozens of artists. Yi Hao was very curious about the Ninth Heaven restaurant that he mentioned. When Elderly heard Yi Hao's question, he was slightly taken aback. In this capital city, from the elderly to the children, who did not know about the Ninth Heaven restaurant? The Ninth Heaven restaurant only appeared in the past 2 years. Your Highness has been sick for the past 2 years. It is normal that you do not know about it. Jiuhong Chestnut reminded carefully. Elderly was enlightened. He quickly stood up and apologized. I am really sorry. Your Highness, please forgive me. This commoner forgot about it. It is fine. Elderly, quickly tell me about the Ninth Heaven restaurant. Yi Hao waved his hand, indicating for Elderly to sit down. If Yi Hao wanted to open a restaurant, it would definitely have an impact on the food industry of this world. From Elderly's tone, this Ninth Heaven restaurant should not be simple. Yi Hao could not wait to know more about it. Thank you, Your Highness. Elderly sat down and sorted out his thoughts. He slowly said, this Ninth Heaven restaurant is not a restaurant that belongs to Yi country. It is said that it is opened by a big power above. Even His Majesty has to show them some respect. This commoner was fortunate enough to go there a few times. The dishes there are very good. Although they are far from being comparable to our 8 famous chefs, they are still slightly better than these few little brothers. The little brothers that Elderly was talking about were naturally the beginner chefs. Even Father has to show some respect. Looks like there is another potential enemy. Yi Hao frowned. But since things had come to this, there was no need to give up. That was not his character. Chapter 28. But don't worry, Your Highness. Although the taste is not as good as Ninth Heaven restaurants, the taste of the dishes and the novel cooking methods are something that Ninth Heaven restaurant can't compare to. Oldly saw Yi Hao frowning and thought that Yi Hao was not satisfied with the beginner chefs. He tried to persuade him. Besides, we still have the 8 great chefs. Yes. Yi Hao was too lazy to explain and nodded. Let's continue eating and rest early. We will be busy tomorrow. Yi Hao asked the 10 people who learned to sit down and eat while the other 10 continued to help in the kitchen. After a while, the system notification kept ringing, and he gained 7 more beginner chefs and 3 more intermediate chefs. In just a short while, his reputation points had increased to 225. Yi Hao's eyes glowed with blue light as he looked at the 20 waitresses and rushed them into the kitchen. Although everyone was curious, no one asked. After a while, the system notification sounded again. Yi Hao was so happy that his mouth opened wide, and he danced with joy. Your Highness, are you all right? Everyone saw Yi Hao standing there in a daze, laughing foolishly and occasionally even dancing with joy. Jiuhong Chestnut asked with concern. I'm fine. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, Yi Hao waved his hand awkwardly. He prayed in his heart that he would not destroy his domineering and mighty image in their hearts. The waitresses were the same as the men. There were 15 beginner chefs and 5 intermediate chefs. He gained another 225 reputation points. Yi Hao quickly checked his character information. Yi Hao country. Yi country, 10th grade kingdom. Identity, 18th prince of Yi country strength. Peak martial artist, 100 to 200 gene for ordinary people, 300 gene for rank 1 martial artist. Skill, Detection, beginner, can detect the information of characters not higher than the main character by 2 levels. Beast taming, beginner, can tame ordinary horses and wild beasts. Archery, beginner, can shoot from 100 steps away. Resurrection point, 355 soul points, 32 reputation points, for 67 generals, 21 chefs, 48 subordinates, 9 peak martial artist subordinates. Zhang Yang items, 300 sets of armor, city, level 1 construction, 1 dagger, 10 face-changing pills, 2 teleportation talismans, 1 general summon money, 1,270,000 taels of gold, 200,000 taels of silver, 500,010 copper coins mission. Heart of the Strong SSS? Number 1 on the Imperial Dragon list, there were still more than 300 resurrection points left. He could still summon 3 more generals. There was also a reward of summoning a general. However, Yihao was not prepared to do so. Yihao had always wanted to summon a few tacticians, but it was too difficult. After summoning so many generals, he did not have a single tactician. In this world, strategies were weak to begin with. If he could obtain a few peerless strategists, it would definitely be like adding wings to a tiger. By the way, the chef can be summoned. Yihao suddenly thought of something. Is it possible to become a strategist? No. The system knew what Yihao was thinking and said coldly. Then how do I recruit a counselor? Yihao asked disappointedly. You just have to complete the Heart of the Strong quest or some other special quests. Hearing the system's words, Yihao knew that there was no hope of summoning a counselor. However, after the Imperial Dragon rankings ended, the Yi army should be almost ready. The strategy that Yihao gave to Yi Batian was to show that the country of Yi was recruiting and training troops, causing the country of Zhao to focus their attention on this aspect. In reality, the country of Ye's army had already been split up into smaller groups, secretly gathering at the borders of Zhao. There was even a small group of troops gathered in the capital city of Zhao. When the time came, the Yi army would be able to catch the Zhao army off guard. This would allow the Yi army to be in an invincible position. They would be able to attack or retreat. If they could capture the capital of the Zhao army in one fell swoop, it would be a complete victory. At that time, when Yihao spoke of this strategy in front of the civil and military officials, no one could refute it. They were all secretly shocked. The Yi Batian immediately slapped the table and made a decision. The entire country's army was mobilized, showing that everything was calm and peaceful. However, it was secretly filled with killing intent. Yihao originally wanted to go with the army, but he was stopped by the Yi Batian. It just so happened that Yihao's prince trial was about to begin. The Yi Batian wanted him to stay in the imperial palace and personally lead the troops. This way, not only could he protect Yihao's safety, but he could also give Yihao a lot of political achievements. However, Yihao didn't think so. How could he develop if he stayed in the capital? He still hadn't used his city construction blueprint. He couldn't waste it. There were still 20 days before the deadline. Yihao had already decided that after the Imperial Dragon rankings ended, he would go out and gain experience. There was still a year left before the heart of the expert mission. Yihao needed more resources. While witnessing the strange happenings of this continent, he also needed to develop his strength. Yihao was already a little impatient. Just like in a game, he would build a city while gathering resources. Then, he would lead an army of thousands to conquer the city. Everyone, rest early. Tomorrow is the most important day. Tomorrow will be the day when all the influential figures in the country of Yi will be here. Whether or not we can spread the name of the Flame Yellow Tower will depend on tomorrow, Yihao said to everyone after finishing his meal. Don't worry, Your Highness, the 8 special chefs said in unison. Master, don't worry. As long as these people don't lose their sense of taste, we won't fail. Shen San was full of confidence. The next morning, Yihao led everyone to work. Shen San invited a few opera troops and set up a stage at the entrance. Because it was the first day of business, they only received high officials and nobles. Ordinary people couldn't afford it. It was almost noon, but there wasn't a single guest. Yihao couldn't help but worry. Could it be that even his reputation as the 18th prince wasn't enough? On the other hand, there were quite a lot of onlookers at the entrance. Most of them were there to watch the show. Yi Hao was bored, so he also moved a chair and sat at the entrance to watch. However, it was very boring. If this was compared to the operas of China in the past, it would be trash. If it wasn't for the fact that there weren't many resurrection points, Yi Hao would have summoned a few famous operas from Earth to show these people what an opera was. Your Highness, we have a guest. Jiuhong Chestnut reminded Yi Hao when he was about to fall asleep. Greetings to Your Highness, the 18th Prince. I wish Your Highness a prosperous business. A middle-aged man walked up to Yi Hao and bowed respectfully. It was obvious that he was an official from the imperial court. Sir, you are too courteous. You are a guest today. Please come in. Although Yi Hao didn't recognize this person, he still said politely. After all, this person was here to take care of his business. Yi Hao looked at this official carefully. Since this person was the first to come, it meant that he was giving him face. Your Highness, you have to be careful today. I heard that the second prince will be here today to cause trouble. Moreover, the people from the ninth heaven will also be here. That official cupped his fist, looked around, and reminded Yi Hao softly. Chapter 29. Zhou Yu age, 45 position, 5th rank official talent, 83 intermediate character, upright martial strength. Normal hearing Zhou Yu's words, Yi Hao knew that Zhou Yu had the intention of befriending him, so he used an appraisal skill. It turned out that Zhou Yu was just a small 5th rank official. However, his talent was not bad and he was worth nurturing. Moreover, his character was not bad. It seemed that he was an upright person, so it wasn't easy to survive in the imperial court. This intermediate talent was enough for him to be a prime minister in a country like Yi. However, he should be able to survive in a 9th rank country. It was a pity that he was just a 5th rank official. Thank you for your reminder, sir. Let's have a small gathering if there's a chance. Yi Hao only had generals now. Even if he didn't have strategists to manage the imperial court, he definitely couldn't do without civil officials. This Zhou Yu had the intention of befriending him. Moreover, his talent and character were not bad. Yi Hao planned to recruit him for his own use. Zhou Yu saw that Yi Hao's attitude towards him was not bad. When he heard Yi Hao's words, he knew that this was not the place to talk. Thus, he followed the waiter into the restaurant. Slowly, it was noon. The number of customers increased. Most of them were officials from the imperial court. There were also quite a few businessmen. Yi Hao received them all, leaving a good impression on everyone. Oh, who is this? Why is he doing the work of a servant? A dignified prince opening a shabby restaurant with such extravagance? I'm really worried for His Majesty. At this moment, a sarcastic voice sounded. Yi Hao frowned slightly. He didn't expect that someone would dare to find trouble with him right after he opened his restaurant. A person walked towards him with a fan in his hand. Behind him were a few servants. He was extremely arrogant and looked down on everyone. He looked as if he was second to the heavens. At this moment, the crowd were watching the show all looked over. Everyone was discussing. Who is this person? Why is he so arrogant? He doesn't even care about a prince. You don't even know him. He's the son of the right prime minister. He usually bullies people and does all kinds of evil. So it's him. When the crowd heard the background of the hedonistic young master, they revealed looks of disgust and fear. They couldn't help but take a few steps back. How dare you? Although Lord Song is the right prime minister, you can't be so presumptuous in front of the prince. Zhou Di heard the commotion outside and immediately ran out. Who do you think you are? You're just a 5th rank official. How dare you meddle in my business? Sonja didn't take Zhou Yu seriously at all. His tone was extremely arrogant and condescending. After saying that, he was about to use his hand to slap Zhou Yu. Don't you like to stand out? I'll beat you to death. It's a good opportunity to teach you a lesson for not even giving my father face. And according to Songja's guess, this Zhou stood up for Yi Hao, which meant that he was on Yi Hao's side. He could find fault with Yi Hao, but he didn't dare to do anything to Yi Hao. After all, Yi Hao was a prince. If he did anything, even the crown prince and his father wouldn't be able to protect him. Therefore, he wanted to teach Zhou Yu a lesson. It was fine to hit a fifth-rank official. At most, he would be grounded for a few days on the surface. Moreover, he could make Yi Hao lose face in front of everyone. Since Lu Xiaofeng and the others were in the restaurant, they didn't expect anyone would dare to make trouble. Now, there were only Yi Hao, Jiuhong Chestnut, and a group of waiters at the door. Everyone observed a moment of silence for Zhou Yu. This beating was unavoidable. Many people were gloating over his misfortune. Do you think it's useful to curry favor with the 18th prince? Now, even the 18th prince can't stop you from getting a slap. Although Song Zhe was a hedonistic young master, his martial arts were not bad. He was a 7th-rank martial artist and could be considered an expert among the younger generation in Yi country. Zhou Yu saw that Song Zhe was about to hit him. Although he knew he couldn't avoid it, he didn't flinch. He couldn't lose his backbone and let these people look down on him. Song Zhe saw Zhou Yu's unyielding attitude and became angrier. He increased the strength of his hand. If this slap landed on Zhou Yu's face, it would definitely make him lose his mind. Enough! Yi Hao was very satisfied with Zhou Yu's unyielding attitude. After all, Zhou Yu stood up for him. How could he just stand there and watch him get slapped? Yi Hao moved forward with the butterfly steps and pushed Song Zhe's hand away with ease. Who is it? Song Zhe felt that his right hand was going numb, but he didn't see the person who slapped him clearly. He immediately dodged aside and shouted angrily, "Who dares to ruin my business? You must be tired of living." The crowd only saw a blur. They thought Zhou Yu would be slapped away, but he didn't. Instead, Song Zhe dodged aside with his right hand in front of his chest, and Yi Hao stood in front of Zhou Yu. The crowd couldn't believe it. Yi Hao was 3 or 4 meters away from Zhou Yu just now. How could he suddenly appear in front of Zhou Yu and block Song Zhe's slap? How could it be you? How could you be so fast and so strong? Song Zhe also couldn't believe it, but Yi Hao was really standing in front of Zhou Yu. He had to believe it. "Thank you, Your Highness, for saving my life." Zhou Yu closed his eyes at the last second, but after waiting for a long time, he only heard Song Zhe shout. When Zhou Yu opened his eyes, he saw the back of Yi Hao, who was shorter than him, standing in front of him. Zhou Yu was very touched. He made up his mind to follow Yi Hao. He walked to Yi Hao and thanked him. "You are my man. If anyone wants to hurt you, it depends on whether I agree or not." Yi Hao's childlike voice came, but it was very serious, as if it didn't come from child's mouth. Hearing Yi Hao's words, the crowd quieted down. They were all thinking whether he was still a child. Zhou Yu's eyes were hot, and his heart was warm. He couldn't imagine that he, who was in his 40s, would be touched by a child's words. Zhou Yu's blood was boiling in his heart. He would die for this. At this moment, Yi Hao's image changed drastically among the crowd. The 18th prince, who was the pride of all the people of Yi 3 years ago, was back. And he was back in a strong way. One must know that 3 years ago, Yi Hao's name was known to every household. He was the pride of the people of Yi. But later on, he became retarded, causing people to sigh endlessly. The reputation of the 18th prince also disappeared without a trace. Who would have thought that the 18th prince would become even more powerful today? Everyone was thinking whether Yi Hao was pretending to be stupid. He was afraid that he would be killed if he was in the limelight, so he pretended to be stupid. But in private, he had been practicing hard. Otherwise, how could he be so calm? Moreover, he was so skilled in martial arts. Everyone suspected that Yi Hao opened the restaurant to announce that the genius 18th prince was back. Chapter 30. Let's go. Song Zhe looked at the crowd. He didn't slap Yi Hao's face, but he made Yi Hao more famous. But he didn't dare to do anything to Yi Hao, so he snorted and looked at Yi Hao viciously. "You're just a bastard." Yi Hao didn't take Song Zhe seriously at all. Song Zhe stopped. He was so angry that his lungs were about to explode, but he didn't dare to lose his temper. He pushed the crowd in front of him away and said, "Get out of my way." The crowd looked down on Song Zhe even more. He was a typical bully. He directly dragged down Right Prime Minister's reputation while Yi Hao's reputation soared. "Dear guests, I'm sorry for offending you just now. Please go inside and have a rest." All the guests gathered at the door. Yi Hao said without any arrogance. Many people came up to talk with Yi Hao and wanted to make friends with him. The 3rd prince came over with the 6th prince, and the third prince and greeted him with a smile. 18th brother, your business is good. Greetings, third prince, sixth prince, and the third prince. Third brother, sixth brother, 13th brother, you're too polite. It's just a small restaurant. I hope you can give me some advice later. Yihao saw a young man beside the third prince. On his head was a crown with gold rings and jade ornaments. He was wearing a robe with flowers embroidered on it. His armor was covered with thousands of fiery dragon scales and a red agate belt. He was holding a red Fong Tian halberd. It was Lu Fong, young Marquis of One. Judging from the distance between him and the third prince didn't suspect him. The third prince liked him very much. Come, 18th brother, let me introduce you. This is my new trusted subordinate, Lu Fong. His strength is not bad, only a rank 7 or rank 8 martial warrior. When the third prince saw Yihao looking at Lu Fong, he immediately introduced him in a boastful tone. 18th brother, you should be careful in the royal dragon list. The third prince pretended to remind him kindly. Yihao sneered in his heart. This third prince was really scheming. Lu Fong was one of his people, so how could he not know how strong Lu Fong was? Lu Fong was clearly a peak martial artist, but Lu Fong insisted on hiding his strength. This kind of person was the most terrifying. Greetings, Your Highness. Lu Fong didn't give Yihao any face and greeted him expressionlessly. Lu Fong, don't be impudent. The third prince reprimanded. 18th brother, Lu Fong is immature. Please don't blame him. What are you talking about, third brother? It's fine. Yihao pretended to be displeased, but still magnanimously said that it was fine. Big brother, fourth brother is here. The third prince noticed Yihao's displeasure and wanted to resolve the awkwardness. However, he happened to see the first prince and his group walking over. However, the eldest prince's expression did not look too good. He glared at Yihao with resentment and was about to lead his group into the restaurant. On the other hand, the fourth prince's expression was that of a petty person who had succeeded, as if he was very happy to see the eldest prince suffer. These two don't get along at all. Yihao naturally saw their expressions, but Yihao is not that easy to bully. Your people are causing trouble for me, so it must have something to do with you. Big brother, that song something is one of your people, right? Yihao reached out to stop the eldest prince and asked fearlessly, What's wrong? The eldest prince was unhappy. He saw everything that Songja did, but he was scared away by Yihao. He was also ridiculed by the fourth prince. How could he be in a good mood? It's fine. Take care of your dog. Yihao smiled and waved his hand. Got it. With so many people here, the eldest prince already hated Yihao. This restaurant was supposed to be his, but Yihao took it back and he lost face. He wanted to let Songja humiliate Yihao to get back his face. However, it helped him become famous, and he was even ridiculed by the fourth prince. However, it was not the right time to lose his temper. After all, there were too many people here, and his father would come later. He was already thinking about how to make him lose face. However, looking at his favorite subordinate behind him, the eldest prince could not help but sneer complacently. No matter how arrogant you are, you don't even have a powerful subordinate. You will suffer on the Imperial Dragon list. The depression in his heart was swept away. His Majesty is here. A voice like that of a male duck was heard. A group of people wearing black iron helmets with a blood-red tassel on the helmets were clad in heavy black iron armor and blood-red cloaks. They had black iron heavy sabers hanging from their waists and made a clattering sound as they walked. They were the Imperial Army. The Imperial Guards walked to the entrance of Yanhuang Restaurant and divided into two groups. They cleared a path in the middle and were ready for battle. A dragon carriage slowly stopped at the entrance of Yanhuang Restaurant. A spirited, middle-aged man dressed in silk walked down from it. It was Yi Batian. Long live the Emperor! The onlookers immediately knelt down when they saw the Emperor. Son greets His Majesty. The princes did not need to kneel. They all bowed. Rise! Yi Batian waved his hand, and the domineering aura of a superior struck fear into everyone's hearts. Yi Batian walked to Yihao's side and patted Yihao's head lovingly. This restaurant of yours is really big. Even His Majesty has been alerted. This scene immediately changed in the eyes of the crowd. It was clear that Yi Batian loved Yi Hao dearly. He treated the other princes seriously, but his love for Yi Hao was all expressed on his face. The emperors stood at the side. Their hearts were filled with jealousy, but they did not dare to step forward. "How have you found a cook?" Yi Batian asked worriedly. "Don't worry, father. I'll definitely make your appetite whet." Yi Hao was full of confidence. "That's good. Just don't let His Majesty lose face." Hearing Yi Hao's words, Yi Batian was slightly relieved. "Why are you unfilial sons here?" Yi Batian looked surprised as if he had just seen the emperors. "Damn, do you have to be so biased? It seems like you only have eyes for your Hao." The emperors cursed in his heart. Did he have to be so biased? He had so many sons, not one less than Yi Hao. All the onlookers were dumbfounded. It seemed that he was not being serious towards the other princes. He did not even see them. He only had eyes for Yi Hao. "Father, we are also here to support 18th brother's business." The third prince saw that the other princes had turned their heads to the side to soothe the trauma in their hearts. He could only stand up and say this awkwardly. "That's right. Your 18th brother has been sick for the past few years, and you all did not take care of him. This time, you all have to spend more money. It just so happens that your 18th brother does not have much money." Yi Batian said matter-of-factly, "Whoever does not spend more will have their legs broken." "Yes, your majesty." The emperors agreed with tears in their eyes. He cursed in his heart. He has no money. He has no money. The day before yesterday, he earned more than 5 million taels of gold. How dare he say that he has no money? How can he be so biased? Chapter 31. Yi Hao was speechless. He didn't expect to have such a weird father. But fortunately, he was good to him. Yi Hao was starting to suspect if the other princes were his biological sons. There was a group of people behind Yi Batian. Prime Minister Li, Prime Minister Song, and Qin Mo were all behind Yi Batian. Yi Hao greeted them one by one. But when he saw the cute little girl beside Prime Minister Li, his face turned black. Wasn't this the little girl who pinched his crotch that day? Although it was a misunderstanding, Yi Hao remembered that kind of pain. So she was Prime Minister Li's daughter. Li Luoyu saw Yi Hao looking at her, and her cute little face blushed. She stuck out her tongue playfully at Yi Hao and then lowered her little head in embarrassment. Prime Minister Li looked at Yi Hao strangely and then looked at his daughter. His face revealed a sly smile. Just as everyone was about to enter the restaurant, the second prince and the fifth prince led a group of people over on horseback. They bowed to Yi Batian and greeted the other ministers. But Yi Hao noticed that there was a gap between the fifth prince and the second prince. They were no longer as servile as before. Maybe it was because of Cheng, Yao Jin, and Hua Xiong. But there was another person beside the second prince. He was fat and dressed in silk and satin. He didn't look like a servant at all. Moreover, there were a few bodyguards behind him. Yi Hao used his probing skill and found out that they were people from the Ninth Heaven restaurant. And their strength was not bad. Guan Jindong age, 45 occupation, intermediate chef strength, 7th level warrior friendliness, 60 identity, manager of the Ninth Heaven restaurant in Yi country. "Greetings, Emperor Yi." Guan Jindong cupped his fist and greeted. It was a simple greeting without much servility. It seemed that he didn't put Yi Batian's identity in his eyes. "Isn't this Manager Guan? Why are you here?" Yi Batian looked at Guan Jindong and nodded. He didn't care about Guan Jindong's attitude. It seemed that he was afraid of the power behind Guan Jindong. "This is not my disciple. He is your country's second prince's subordinate. He wanted to compete and asked me to come and have a look." Guan Jindong said with a smile. His smile made the flesh on his face trembled. "Oh!" Yi Batian's expression changed as he looked at the second prince in confusion. Kong, Master A. Today, Kongla learned a few new dishes. I'm worried that Qijing's chef won't be good. Father, if you don't like it, I specially asked him to give you some advice. The second prince made up an excuse. Thank you for your kindness, but I don't need it. Yi Hao was too lazy to believe the second prince's lame excuse. Didn't he just want to cause trouble? Just say it directly. Since you are so confident, why don't we have a competition? How could the second prince let Yi Hao refuse? He immediately proposed a written competition. Why should I compete? Yi Hao looked at the second prince, as if he was looking at a clown. What's wrong? You don't dare? If you don't dare, I can lend you Kong Lo. Don't lose face at that time. The second prince was almost speechless, so he had to goad him. That's right. If you can't do it, then don't open a restaurant. No, second brother. Just lend Kong Lo to second brother. The second prince winked at the fifth prince, but the fifth prince pretended not to see it. He had a hint to the other princes. The other princes didn't have any backing, so they could only rely on the second prince. They had to accompany the second prince to goad Yi Hao. It's okay to have a competition, but there should be a prize. Yi Hao looked at the group of princes as if he was looking at a group of idiots. How could they goad Yi Hao? But since they had put their faces forward, Yi Hao would feel embarrassed if he didn't beat them. Okay, what's the prize? Seeing Yi Hao agree, the second prince was full of joy and asked hurriedly, Let's bet all your properties. What do you think? Yi Hao said surprisingly. What? Are you sure? The second prince was afraid that he misheard and asked loudly. Yi Hao was sure to lose. Where did he get the confidence to bet with him? Did he really have a good chef? Or was he just playing hard to get to scare him? The second prince couldn't make up his mind. Howard, are you sure? Yi Batian asked in a low voice. The competition of the Imperial Dragon rankings was just around the corner. He couldn't help but worry. To be honest, he also wanted to pass the throne to Yi Hao. But if the second prince won the Imperial Dragon rankings again, he would have no choice but to make him the crown prince. This was the rule of the Yi family. Even if he became the emperor, he couldn't violate it. Besides, Kong Li's cooking skills were really good. He was even better than the imperial chefs in the palace. Besides, he had a chef from the Ninth Heaven restaurant with him. Yi Hao had no chance of winning. Besides, there weren't many famous chefs in the capital. They were either in the palace or in the Ninth Heaven restaurant. Where could Yi Hao find a chef? The ministers shook their heads and sighed. Yi Hao was still too young. He couldn't even stand a few provocations. Now, he was going to give back the shop he just got. On the contrary, Zhou was very optimistic about Yi Hao. He believed that Yi Hao would not fight a battle without a strategy. Although he had not been in contact with Yi Hao for a while, when he saw Yi Hao's relaxed expression, he was sure that Yi Hao was very capable. As for Jiuhong Chestnut and the others, they had 8 divine chefs. It would be difficult for them to lose. They silently mourned for the second prince for 3 minutes. Zhao Zilong stood aside and carefully protected Yi Hao. He found that the princes all had good experts around them. At the same time, he reminded himself not to be careless in the future. These princes weren't simple. It seemed that he had to find a chance to report to his master. Second brother, it's obvious that the kid is faking it. Don't you believe in Kong Li's strength? He can even make a living person appear. You can't compete with him. The fifth prince whispered into the second prince's ear after Cheng Yaojin's attack fell. In Cheng Yaojin's words, let them fight. Anyway, it was good for them to lose. The fifth prince had already listened to Cheng Yaojin's words. However, he didn't know that Cheng Yaojin was one of Yi Hao's men and could take his life at any time. All right then. Father, please be my witness. If I lose, I will hand over all my shops to you. The second prince was convinced by the fifth prince's words that Yi Hao was feigning calmness, so he spoke confidently. All right, I will be your witness. Yi Batian looked at Yi Hao and saw that he was full of confidence. He had no choice but to agree. Chapter 32. What? 18th brother, don't tell me that you know you will lose, so you just give up. Everyone was stunned when they heard Yi Hao's words. They looked at Yi Hao strangely. The fourth prince even asked in a mocking manner. At the same time, the fourth prince was worried. If the second prince won the store easily, the second prince would have an advantage in the Imperial Dragon list. However, don't be rash, Yi Batian said seriously. He also thought Yi Hao had given up from the bottom of his heart. Father, you'll know after the competition. Yi Hao didn't expect that Yi Batian didn't think he would win either. Seeing the second prince so confident, Yi Hao couldn't stand it. You compete with my second brother's subordinate. Go easy on him. Don't let him lose too badly. Yi Hao pointed at a waitress who was one of the 5 intermediate chefs. Yi Hao didn't think she was arrogant. After all, Yi Batian thought highly of Kong Lu, so he must be outstanding. However, an intermediate chef was enough. You've gone too far, Kong Lu said angrily. He didn't expect that Yi Hao would use a girl to humiliate him. A girl might not even be able to pick up an iron wok, let alone compete with him. The iron wok used by a chef was different from the iron wok of an ordinary family. Even a man might not be able to pick it up without practicing for a long time. However, Yi Hao used a girl to humiliate him and said he should go easy on him. If it weren't for Yi Hao's identity, Kong Lu would have fought with Yi Hao. Kong Lu, don't be angry. If you win, I'll give you a big reward. Although the second prince also felt that Yi Hao was humiliating him, he was more sure that Yi Hao was at his wit's end. If so, he would definitely win, so he comforted him in a good mood. Since that's the case, why don't we compete outside so that everyone can broaden their horizons? The second prince wanted to embarrass Yi Hao in front of everyone, so of course, he couldn't compete in the kitchen at the back. Let's see if your people can't even pick up the wok. Let's see if you still dare to be arrogant. Everyone shook their heads and sighed. After all, Yi Hao had left a good impression on everyone, but he was still too young. What was the use of a moment of anger? Although they couldn't bear to see Yi Hao lose, everyone still wanted to see Kong Li's culinary skills. Everyone in the capital city knew about the Nine Heavens restaurant, but it wasn't something that the commoners could afford. This Kong Lu also had a certain reputation, and he was Guan Zhendong's disciple. His culinary skills must be extraordinary. Since they couldn't afford it, they still wanted to broaden their horizons. The Yi Batian could not go against the will of the people. He had no choice but to order people to quickly build 2 stoves at the entrance. In a short while, the 2 stoves were completed. You may begin, Yi Batian ordered as he sat down with the ministers and emperors. Little girl, do you need me to go easy on you? Kong Lu looked at Little Meng provocatively. Little Meng ignored him. Oomph. Kong Lu snorted coldly and began to cut the vegetables. Then, he started the fire. His movements were smooth, and it was obvious that he had some culinary skills. It seems that Kong Li's culinary skills have improved. Guan Zhendong rubbed his chin and said with satisfaction. On the other hand, Little Meng stood there motionless, staring at Kong Lu. 18th brother, is your subordinate scared silly? The second prince said mockingly. Your Highness, can she do it? Zhou Quan asked softly, as he was also a little nervous. Don't worry. Soon, a dish was ready on Kong Li's side. The air was filled with the aroma of the dish. Little Meng started to work, but she was tidying up and washing the dishes slowly. Kong Lu looked at Little Meng with disdain. Just as he was about to mock her again, he saw Little Meng waving the kitchen knife in her hand. Her knife skills were as smooth as flowing water, as if she was dancing. Everyone rubbed their eyes, unable to believe what they were seeing. She could cut the vegetables so beautifully. In a short while, more than a dozen vegetables were cut into different shapes, strips, dices, slices, shreds, one by one. They fell on the plate in front of them. This little girl has such knife skills. Not bad, not bad. Yi Batian praised repeatedly. Even Guan Zhendong was slightly surprised. Even he couldn't compare with her knife skills. Could it be that there were really hidden talents in Yi? In fact, Guan Zhendong couldn't be blamed. The knife skills of the chefs in this world were not as particular as the ones on Earth. If the knife speed was fast enough, it would be fine as long as the knife was sharp and accurate. However, most of the chefs were thinking about how to make the dishes taste good. No one would put in much effort in their knife skills. Second prince, don't worry. Her knife skills are at least more than 10 years old. This girl is still young and only focused on knife skills. Her cooking skills are definitely not good enough. Guan Zhendong saw the worried look on the second prince's face and told him his thoughts. Moreover, look at the heat on the stove. Even I wouldn't dare to do that. Guan Zhendong said with more certainty after seeing Little Meng's actions. The second prince was slightly relieved. But then, Little Meng quickly cooked one dish after another. Moreover, they were all dishes that no one had ever heard of before. Each dish had its own style, and there were all kinds of dishes. They were fresh and rich, spicy and spicy. Moreover, each dish was like a piece of art placed in front of everyone. After finishing, she quickly carved a few decorations and placed them on each plate. Each of the carvings was vivid and lifelike. What kind of dish is this? Guan Zhendong was shocked. Just by smelling the aroma, it was enough to make one salivate. He knew that this girl's cooking skills were not inferior to his. Was she really just a waitress? And how old was she? Quickly bring it over for me to taste, Yi Batian said anxiously. In a world of 10,000 kingdoms, there were only a few types of dishes. However, Little Meng's dishes were all new. Yi Batian could not wait to try them. Imperial Father, this is called shredded pork with yuxiang. This is called kung pao chicken. This is called sliced beef and chili long. Yi Hao was very happy when he saw Yi Batian eating heartily. After all, this was his father. Because Little Meng was a Sichuan chef, she cooked Sichuan cuisine. Yi Hao introduced them one by one. Yi Batian did not have the time to care about Yi Hao. He was a typical foodie. Once he had food, he forgot about his son. He no longer had the bearing of an emperor. He wolfed down the delicacies on the jade plate in front of him. Every dish was a feast for the eyes. The aroma wafted around the nose of everyone. Seeing the emperor eating so happily, everyone secretly swallowed their saliva. Even Guan Zhendong's gaze was on the plate. Kong Lu was the most embarrassed here. He stood by the stove and looked at the dishes in the pot. He did not know whether to cook or not. No one was looking at him. Everyone was staring at Yi Batian and the dishes on the table that were about to be finished. Guan Zhendong looked at Little Meng with shining eyes. If he could recruit such a good seedling to the Nine Heavens Pavilion, it would definitely be a great achievement. Then his position in the Nine Heavens Pavilion would skyrocket. As for Yi Hao, he did not even put him in his eyes. People strive to climb higher. He believed that as long as he gave the conditions, Little Meng would definitely not reject. Chapter 33. My lords, there is a menu inside. What would you like to order? The waiter will serve you. Yi Hao gave Shen Wansan a look. Shen Wansan immediately ran out and helped to arrange the seats. Everyone was shocked when they saw the price on the menu. They felt their hearts ache. It was too expensive. But when they thought of the aroma of the dishes, the emperor's expression when he wolfed down the food, and then looked at the pictures on the menu that made them drool, they all wanted to order all of them. They couldn't wait to order all the dishes. Just looking at them made them drool. It was very difficult for them to choose. They didn't know which dish to eat because they had never seen any of the dishes before. They wanted to try every dish. However, some people had already taken advantage of the situation. Not long after, fragrant delicacies were served on the table. When everyone saw this, they couldn't help but ask the waitress and waiter to place their orders. Guan Zhendong was stunned when he saw this scene. Did he pick up a family of chefs? He wanted to enter the kitchen, but was immediately blocked. When he glanced at them, he found that they were the same 5 men and 5 women. They were all so young. Dishes were served quickly. Guan Zhendong looked at the dishes and the tempting aroma. He knew that none of the dishes were inferior to Little Meng's. No, I have to report this to my superiors. Guan Zhendong realized the seriousness of the problem, but he still ran over and ordered a few dishes to try. He wanted to see how they tasted. Where did you find so many chefs? Yi Batian had moved to a private room. He looked down at the hall and asked, This? Yi Hao didn't know what to say. It's okay if you don't want to say. Yi Batian saw Yi Hao's awkward expression and didn't want to make things difficult for Yi Hao. But you can lend 1 or 2 of these chefs to my father. My father is tired of those imperial chef's dishes. Yi Batian stared at Yi Hao with a cunning look. No problem, Yi Hao agreed. Anyway, he had 8 special grade chefs in his hands. Although he could have as many intermediate grade chefs as he wanted, he also understood that the rarer something was, the more valuable it was. Originally, he had wanted the 8 special chefs to personally cook for him. But now, it seemed that there was no need for that. These intermediate chefs were enough. If this gluttonous father emperor were to ask him for special chefs, he would suffer a huge loss. Are you prepared for the Imperial Dragon list in 2 days? Yi Batian asked. Aken is already prepared. Yi Hao saw that Yi Batian seemed to have something on his mind, so he asked, Does Imperial Father have something on his mind? Yi Batian looked at Yi Hao in surprise. He didn't expect Yi Hao to be able to tell that he had something on his mind. I don't know where your fifth brother got his hands on an expert named Hua Xiong. I've sent someone to investigate his identity. Yi Hao was shocked when he heard that. It can't be that they found out about me, right? However, he still pretended to be calm on the surface. I found nothing wrong with his identity. Moreover, his strength is extraordinary. He could be considered a top expert in our country. Yi Hao, relax. That's a good thing. Imperial Father, why are you still worried? Yi Hao didn't understand. Imperial Father is worried about you. Yi Batian looked at Yi Hao lovingly. Your Imperial Mother passed away when you were young. Imperial Father hasn't taken good care of you. I hope you won't blame Imperial Father. With me around, your brothers won't dare to do anything. But if something happens to me one day, none of them will have the talent to become an emperor. But it's precisely because each of them has their own army that they won't submit to anyone. At that time, the country of Yi will be destroyed in my hands. Now, your fifth brother is recommending Hua Xiong to me to become the commander of the Imperial Guards. I really don't know what to do. No matter how much I don't like him, he's still my son. Yi Batian slowly revealed his worries, because he didn't have anyone to discuss it with. Now that he was on the throne, he could still suppress the officials. However, the officials had their own factions. This was something he couldn't change. Imperial Father, our country of Yi needs capable people to take on great responsibilities. Since Imperial Father says that Hua Xiong is talented, then let's make him the commander of the Imperial Guards. Yi Hao persuaded. In any case, Hua Xiong was one of them. He was the one who ordered Hua Xiong to do so. You really think so? Aren't you afraid? Yi Batian asked in surprise. At the same time, he was interrupted by Yi Hao before he could finish his sentence. Imperial Father, fifth brother got Hua Xiong because of fifth brother's ability. This shows that he's outstanding. Moreover, I plan to go out and gain experience after the Imperial Dragon ranking competition ends. I plan to recruit talents and cultivate my own forces. Yi Hao continued to pretend to be selfless. At the same time, he told his father about his plan to go out and gain experience. You've already made your own plans. Yi Batian discovered that his precious youngest son had made him look at him in a new light. He liked him even more. Yes, Imperial Father, please allow me to do so. Yi Hao confirmed. Then do you need me to send some Imperial Guards to protect you? No need. Imperial Father, if you send the Imperial Guards, you'll be violating the ancestral rules. Yi Hao didn't want to bring a large group of people to watch over him, although Yi Batian had good intentions. You stinking brat, you want to use the ancestral rules to suppress your father? Yi Batian scolded jokingly. After hearing Yi Hao's words, Yi Batian knew that he was worried for nothing. His son was incomparable to his other sons. His future achievements wouldn't be lower than his own. Then, Imperial Father, I'll go back to the palace. We're about to go to war with Zhao. There's still a pile of memorials waiting for Imperial Father to go to war. I'll capture your fiancée and bring her back to be your wife. Yi Batian stood up and acted like an old man. He didn't look like an emperor at all. Yi Batian had only been so relaxed in front of two people in his life. One was Yi Hao, and the other was Yi Hao's mother. Thinking of this, Yi Batian's eyebrows were filled with longing. Remember to send 2 cooks to show filial piety to your father. Yi Batian shook his head and said sadly. He was just a small emperor of a 10th grade country. He didn't know if he could see his father again in this lifetime. Don't worry, Imperial Father. Yi Hao looked at Yi Batian strangely and promised. Set up the table and return to the palace. Eunuch Zhou shouted happily. It was rare to see Yi Batian so happy. The noise on the first floor immediately disappeared. Everyone put down their bowls and chopsticks and stood up to send them off. You don't have to worry about me. Continue eating. Yi Batian waved his hand and said. He walked out with the eunuchs and guards. At this moment, many people were sneaking glances into the flaming Emperor Tower. When they saw the guards coming out of the tower, they put their hands on their waists. Chapter 34. What's wrong? How, Yi Batian stopped and looked at Yi Hao in confusion. He didn't understand why Yi Hao asked him to stop. Yi Hao didn't say anything. Instead, he kept using appraisal on the passersby. However, he didn't find anything wrong even after using it 5 or 6 times. Am I overthinking? Yi Hao thought he was hallucinating. Just as he was about to say that it was fine, he inadvertently used appraisal on a man who had walked to the corner. "Men, catch him!" Yi Hao shouted. All the royal guards heard the order and immediately rushed towards the man. The assassin didn't expect to be discovered so quickly. He immediately ran into the crowd with the royal guards chasing after him. "Brothers, kill Yi Batian." At this time, someone in the crowd shouted loudly. Immediately, the crowd on the street became even more panicked. Many people took advantage of the chaos and moved closer to Yi Batian. On the other hand, the remaining royal guards could not find the assassin at all. "Protect His Majesty." The royal guards surrounded the entrance of Yanwang Tower. "Zilong, help me protect Imperial Father." Yi Hao snatched the saber from the hands of an Imperial guard and ordered. When he used appraisal, he had already discovered 4 or 5 assassins approaching him. If it weren't for the system, Yi Hao definitely wouldn't have discovered them. If he was any later and even more assassins approach him, he would be in danger. Yi Hao used appraisal and found that these people were all from the kingdom of Zhao. However, there was an additional word assassin in their information. That was why Yi Hao could easily discover the assassins' identities. Moreover, these assassins were much stronger than the royal guards. "However, be careful. Quickly go and protect His Majesty." Yi Batian was afraid that Yi Hao would be in trouble and ordered the royal guards. "Your Majesty, please believe in Master's strength." Zhao Zilong was standing beside Yi Batian with the courage of dragons' silver spear in his hand. "You are Hao Er's subordinate." Yi Batian looked at the silver-robed young general beside him and asked. "Yes, I am." Zhao Zilong was neither servile nor overbearing. He was not afraid of Yi Batian at all. In his eyes, only his master could make him submit. He was not afraid of anyone else. "Not bad." Yi Batian nodded. He was very satisfied with Zhao Zilong's performance. It seemed that Hao Er had really grown up. He was able to obtain such a good general at such a young age. He would definitely achieve great things in the future. No wonder he was Yi Batian's son. Yi Hao used the shadow butterfly steps non-stop, shuttling through the crowd. After a few days of practice, he had basically mastered the shadow butterfly steps. It was just that he was lacking in mastery, but Yi Hao was already very satisfied. "Hey bro, you dropped your money." Yi Hao appeared behind an assassin and patted him on the shoulder. The assassin was stunned, but his years of training allowed him to react quickly. Viciousness flashed in his eyes, and a dagger slipped out of his sleeve. He quickly stabbed backward, aiming for Yi Hao's vital point. "Bro, your reaction is too slow." Yi Hao's voice came from behind him again. The assassin knew that things were not good. He wanted to dodge, but it was already too late. He only saw a large knife cutting through his waist. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for killing a 3rd-ranked warrior assassin. The reward is 30 soul points. After killing an assassin, Yi Hao did not stop and immediately ran toward another assassin. This assassin had already noticed Yi Hao. With a wave of his sleeve, 2 darts were shot out. Yi Hao did not expect the opponent to have such a move. He hurriedly dodged and at the same time used his knife to hit one of the darts. The assassin did not expect to kill Yi Hao with the darts. At the same time he threw the darts, he was already holding a dagger and quickly stabbed towards Yi Hao's heart. If he stabbed it, Yi Hao would definitely die. The assassin's face revealed a mocking smile, as if he could already see Yi Hao dying under his knife. Yi Hao had already noticed that the assassin was about to attack him. It seemed that his combat experience was still insufficient. He immediately used the butterfly shadow steps and narrowly avoided the assassin's fatal attack. Dang, the sound of metal colliding could be heard. It was the sound of the assassin's dagger hitting Yi Hao's knife. The assassin's wrist that was holding the dagger went numb. He could not believe that a child could have such strength. Yi Hao saw the assassin in a daze and knew that his opportunity had come. Butterfly shadow steps. Yi Hao chopped at the assassin's head. The assassin's head rolled to the ground. Blood spurted out from his neck, forming a pillar of blood, and then he fell to the ground. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for killing a 6th-ranked warrior assassin. The reward is 60 soul points. Yi Hao ignored the system's notification and continued to kill the next assassin. The assassin was shocked and puzzled. He had hidden so well in the crowd. How did he get discovered by this brat? The assassin did not dare to delay. He looked at the assassin not far away and gave him a look. Both of their eyes flashed with a sinister light. This child had killed both of them. They definitely could not let him live. Come on, grandson. Let me see what you're capable of. Yi Hao was also excited to kill. He raised the knife in his hand and charged towards the 2 assassins. Die! Yi Hao used all his strength and fiercely slapped the assassin's head with the flat of his knife. Instantly, the assassin's strength was more than 1,200 kilograms. Even though the assassin was also a warrior, he could not withstand such a huge force. His entire head was like a watermelon that had been split open. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere, mixed with the white brain. Some of it splattered on the ground, while others splattered on the panicked crowd. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for killing an assassin. The reward is 40 soul points. Many people who saw this scene did not even bother to run. They directly squatted on the ground and vomited. You can also die for me. The other assassin's dagger cut through Yi Hao's clothes. Fortunately, it did not injure his flesh. He was just stunned by the way his companion died and completely forgot to dodge. Yi Hao's body flipped backwards and the knife in his hand directly pierced into the assassin's chest. Then, he used all his strength to pull it out. A stream of blood spurted onto Yi Hao's face. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for killing a 3rd-stage assassin. The reward is 30 soul points. Yi Hao's image had already caused all the assassins to fear him. How is this a child? He was simply the son of the devil. Moreover, his martial arts were not inferior to these well-trained assassins. What made them most afraid was that Yi Hao seemed to have a spiritual consciousness. Yi Hao's body seemed to have half a spiritual eye. No matter how they hid in the crowd, Yi Hao was able to accurately find them and kill them. Yi Hao was already covered in blood. The blade in his hand was also dripping with blood. Yi Hao did not want to let anyone go. He killed the assassins while constantly using examine on the crowd. Is that still the 18th prince? How can he have such profound martial arts skills? It's simply too terrifying. Chapter 35. Eldest Brother. What do you think of 18th brother's martial arts? The 4th prince was stunned and asked in a daze. I won't lie about the martial arts competition of the Imperial Dragon list. The 1st prince glanced at the 4th prince and said with lingering fear. The scene in front of him was too shocking. Was he the little fool who was always bullied? He was like a little devil. Fortunately, he was not one of those assassins. Second brother, what's wrong with you? The 5th prince moved closer to the 2nd prince and was also very shocked. However, he did not show much respect on his face. We can't let him live, the 2nd prince said with a gloomy face. He felt that Yi Hao was a threat to his position. Moreover, he had just lost all his shops, which made him hate Yi Hao even more. If he let him live, he would become a big trouble. The 5th prince nodded, agreeing with the 2nd prince. However, he did not notice that Cheng Yao Jin, who was behind them, was staring at their backs with murderous intent. It's too late. Retreat. One of the assassins knew that the assassination had failed. If they continued, they would all die here today. So, he immediately shouted. Yi Hao killed 2 more people who did not have time to escape. Then, he used the detection skill. He did not stop until he found that there were no assassins around. Father, are you all right? Yi Hao asked when he saw Yi Batian surrounded by the Imperial Guards and Zhao Zilong standing next to him. He knew that he should be fine, but he still asked. Father, I'm fine. How are you hurt? The Imperial Guards made way for them. Yi Batian looked at Yi Hao with concern. He was afraid that Yi Hao was hurt. There are just a few thieves, Yi Hao said indifferently. At the same time, he felt that he was fine. That's because my son is very skillful. Perhaps even my father can't catch up with you. Yi Batian was not affected by the assassins at all. On the contrary, he was even happier when he saw Yi Hao's skills. He was smiling. Your Majesty, An imperial guard came forward and said, "Speak, Your Highness. We killed a total of 9 assassins, but we didn't find any useful information on them. We didn't have any casualties," the royal guard said nervously, afraid that Yi Batian would blame him. "A bunch of trash," Yi Batian rebuked angrily. He was most worried about the unknown origin of the enemy. It was easy to dodge a spear in the open, but difficult to defend against a stab in the dark. How could he not be angry when he could not even figure out the origin of the enemy after such a long time? Yi Hao couldn't reveal that he had a system, so he could only pretend to guess. "Father, you're angry. I'm guessing that these assassins are from the Zhao kingdom." "Why?" Yi Batian did not understand why his youngest son was so sure that the assassin was from Zhao. "That's right, my 18th brother. You can't jump to conclusions just because you're good at martial arts." The second prince seized the opportunity to ridicule him. "Second brother, when are you going to give me the contract?" "You?" The second prince was so angry that he was speechless. "Second brother is right. 18th brother, you can't make wild guesses. Before we find evidence, no one can say for sure where these assassins came from. They could be remnants of the rebel army." The first prince also saw Yi Hao as a big threat and stood up for the second prince. "Reporting to your majesty, the commander has returned." At this moment, the group of people who had gone to chase after the assassin returned. "Wentian, how was it? Did you catch the assassin?" Yi Batian asked. Nangong Wentian had an apologetic look on his face. "Reporting to your majesty, your subordinate is incompetent. We had already caught the assassin, but he was killed by his accomplice." "All right, I don't blame you," Yi Batian said disappointedly. "However, from the assassin we caught, we found out that he was from the Zhao kingdom. Just as I was about to continue asking, the assassin was killed." Nangong Wentian saw Yi Batian's disappointed expression and continued. "Your subordinate suspects that the assassin was sent by the Zhao kingdom." "What?" the second prince shouted, his voice filled with disbelief. "What's wrong, your majesty?" Nangong Wentian looked at the second prince in confusion. "Making a fuss over nothing. Where are your manners?" Yi Batian reprimanded in dissatisfaction. "Your subordinate knows his mistake." The second prince hurriedly admitted his mistake after being reprimanded by Yi Batian. "Wentian, before you returned, had already told me that the assassin might be from the Zhao kingdom. However, we didn't believe him. Now it seems like it's true." It was obvious that Yi Batian and Nangong Wentian had a good relationship. He was able to answer Nangong Wentian's doubts. "Your Majesty, the 18th prince is truly exceptionally intelligent," Nangong Wentian praised. "By the way, I saw 8 or 9 assassins outside. Who killed them?" "There were 2 people with decent skills here. One was himself, and the other was Qin Mo. However, Qin Mo had been sent to close the city gates and wasn't here." Nangong Wentian didn't know that there were many people here who were not weaker than him. Zhao Zilong was even stronger than him. He was only a low-ranked martial artist, while Zhao Zilong was a high-ranked martial artist. "See for yourself," Yi Batian said with a smile. "It can't be." Nangong Wentian's face was filled with disbelief. He looked at Yi Hao. Only Yi Hao was covered in blood. However, he couldn't believe it. He was still a child. Nangong Wentian knew that the assassins caught were extraordinary. Some of them had reached the 7th stage of martial artist. One must know that assassins could kill people above their level. Their hiding skills were even better. Nangong Wentian asked him to find 9 assassins in the crowd and kill them. He couldn't do it. Could it be that the 18th prince was more powerful than him? Nangong Wentian didn't dare to think about it. "Your Majesty, the 18th prince, the younger generation will surpass us in time. You are proficient in both civil and martial arts." Nangong Wentian praised sincerely. "Thank you for your praise, General Nangong." Yi Hao didn't get carried away. It was as if he had done something insignificant. This made Nangong Wentian look at him in a new light. All the civil officials now knew how powerful Yi Hao was. They didn't know martial arts. They only thought that Yi Hao had killed ordinary assassins. They didn't expect him to be a martial artist. Even so, Yi Hao had already shocked them. They didn't expect that the assassins would be so powerful. Even Nangong Wentian had a lingering fear after saying that. They could imagine how powerful the assassins were. Yet, they were easily killed by Yi Hao. Nangong Wentian's strength was very clear to all the officials present. He was one of the top experts in the country of Yi. He was like the emperor's brother. For him to say that the younger generation will surpass us in time, one could imagine how powerful Yi Hao was. The way the officials looked at Yi Hao changed again. This genius 18th prince seemed to have become even more monstrous after 3 years. He was proficient in both civil and martial arts. He could defeat hundreds of officials with his literary skills. He could defeat generals with his martial arts skills. Chapter 36. Although there were a lot of problems on the first day of business, everything was progressing in a good direction. Although Yanwang restaurant's dishes were extremely expensive, no one could resist the temptation. Who wouldn't want to try something novel and delicious? Ever since Yi Batian left, the stove in Yanwang restaurant hadn't stopped burning. The 10 intermediate chefs kept changing shifts and cooking nonstop. A few of the iron pots were burnt out. The customers who came in all had bulging wallets. When they left, their wallets were empty, but their stomachs were full. All of them left satisfied. Yanwang restaurant was busy from noon until 9 p.m. Even Lu Xiaofeng and the others were recruited to serve as waiters. In the end, it still wasn't enough, so Yi Hao decided to let Zhao Zilong serve as waiters. Although Zhao Zilong couldn't bring himself to do it, he didn't dare to refuse Yi Hao's orders. Even with a dark cloud hanging over his head, he also became a waiter. "Your Highness, isn't it a little too much to let Brother Zilong serve as a waiter?" Zhuhong Chestnut said, trying hard to hold back his laughter. Only His Highness would use a peak martial general expert as a waiter. It's fine, it's fine. Look at how energetic Brother Zilong is." Yi Hao's mouth was stuffed with snacks. He was lying on a rocking chair, swinging his 2 small legs while enjoying Zhuhong Chestnut's massage. Zhao Zilong happened to pass by. When he heard Yi Hao's words, he almost dropped the stack of plates in his hands. Zhuhong Chestnut giggled when he saw Zhao Zilong's embarrassed look. "Sisterling, you look really good when you smile." Yi Hao's 2 small eyes stared straight at Zhuhong Chestnut. After dinner, Yi Hao sat at the table and listened to Shun Wansan's report. "Master, the accounts have been calculated." "Okay, how much did we earn today?" Yi Hao was also a little nervous. No matter what, this was his first business in this world. "A total of 180,000 taels." Shen Wansan looked at Yi Hao nervously. "Oh my God, 180,000 taels." Zhuhong Chestnut, who was standing behind Yi Hao, was so shocked that he couldn't close his mouth. "Not bad. It's worth 18,000 taels of gold." Yi Hao was quite satisfied with this figure. In the past, a restaurant like this would only earn 100 taels of gold a day at most, while the gladiator arena only earned a little more than 1,000 taels of gold. Yi Hao was very satisfied that his shop could earn 18,000 taels of silver a day. "Master, I'm talking about gold," Shen Wansan reminded him. There was a hint of pride in his tone. After all, this was the first thing he did for his master. He had to make sure that his master was satisfied. How is this possible? Yi Hao couldn't believe it, even if he was beaten to death. He knew the price of the dishes. Although the price had increased by more than 10 times, and the business was very good, it was impossible for them to earn so much money. "Your Highness, it's because most of the customers were afraid that they wouldn't be able to book a table tomorrow, so they paid a deposit in advance. Moreover, the reservations are all for the day after tomorrow," Shen Wansan explained. "This was your idea, wasn't it?" Yi Hao was enlightened when he heard this. He guessed that it must be Shen Wansan's idea. One had to know that there was no such thing as a reservation in this world. It seemed that Shen Wansan was really trying his best to keep the customers here. He was indeed a talented businessman. However, when he thought of reservations, Yi Hao thought of the membership cards in his previous world. However, this world was too backward and it was impossible. Nevertheless, Yi Hao still told Shen Wansan about it, hoping that he could learn from it. "Master's ideas are really unprecedented. Wansan can't match up to you," Shen Wansan praised sincerely. "Master, We need to strike while the iron is hot. From today onwards, Yanhuang Tower's reputation will be known by everyone in the capital. Shen Wansan took out a pile of store contract from the second prince and handed them to Yi Hao. I heard from Miss Hongling that since Master is going to participate in the Imperial Dragon ranking, we won't have a chance to participate in the wealth ranking. However, we originally had a chance to participate in the average daily profit ranking. However, the second prince lost more than 70 stores to you and directly reduced the average daily profit. Yi had already asked Yi Batian before. The average daily profit was the profit earned by the store divided by the time the store was taken over. It wasn't calculated by a year. As Yi Hao had only taken over the store yesterday, it had to be calculated from yesterday. Therefore, Yi Hao still had a chance to win. However, the second prince seemed to have predicted this. He had gotten a bunch of store contracts from God knows where. Yi Hao didn't need most of the stores for the time being and would definitely drag him down. There were still 3 days left. Although they had made a profit of 180,000 yuan today, most of the money came from the reservations made in the past few days. In other words, Yanhuang Tower wouldn't be able to make any money in the next few days and would definitely lose. It was rare for Yi Hao to look at the contracts in his hand seriously. Looking at the 5 contracts, he said with satisfaction, "Looks like Wan San has thought it through. In that case, we've earned enough money from the upper class. Then we'll clean up the previous restaurants and send 5 intermediate chefs over. As for these 5 restaurants, it doesn't matter how bad the decorations are as long as they can shelter us from the wind and rain." Yi Hao looked at the 5 land deeds in his hands. They were the land deeds for the 5 restaurants. However, Shan Wansen had told him that these stores were very shabby. Lower the price to the standard of a normal restaurant. Old Hao, I want to go by quantity. Out of the remaining 30 beginner chefs, each family will have 6. Old Li, you'll have to work hard tonight. I'll have to trouble you to lead everyone and rush out the recipes. Yi Hao was rarely serious as he assigned tasks to everyone. Don't worry, Your Highness. Even if I don't sleep tonight, I'll lead everyone to rush out the recipes. Old Li knew the seriousness of this matter. This was related to the Imperial Dragon ranking competition. He would definitely do his best to help Yi Hao draw out the recipes. Thank you, everyone. Yi Hao stood up and thanked them. After all, these were all famous painters in the capital city. They were just relying on him and weren't his slaves. Xiao Feng, go and recruit waiters and waitresses for me tomorrow morning. You can pay them a little higher. Yi Hao then instructed Lu Xiaofeng. Because these beginner chefs were all assigned to cook, they were even more understaffed. Yi Hao really couldn't bear to use his resurrection points and soul points. If he used them all on the restaurants, it would be a waste of talent. After thinking for a long time, Yi Hao still decided to spend money to recruit people. Moreover, even if he summoned ordinary people in the future, Yi Hao couldn't let them be waiters and waitresses anymore. That would be too wasteful. Through Kong Lu, Yi Hao finally understood the culinary skills of this world. It was worse than he imagined. Yi Hao originally thought that beginner chefs were nothing good. Even intermediate chefs were just SOSO in Yi Hao's eyes. Chapter 37. Since the second prince was willing to give so many restaurants to him, he probably didn't know how many chefs he had. If he knew that the waiters and waitresses in Flame Yellow Restaurant were all chefs, and that their culinary skills were comparable to that of the imperial chefs, what would he think? After a tiring day, Yi Hao ordered everyone to rest, leaving only the artist to continue painting. Yi Hao originally thought that it would be great if he could exchange for a camera and then a printer. That way, he would not have to trouble the artist. However, the system told him that his level was not high enough, and that he could not summon technological items unless it was a reward from the system. Then forget it, Yi Hao said disappointedly. It seemed that he could only summon cold weapons, and could not even summon hot weapons. Otherwise, if he could summon a few nuclear bombs, he would be invincible. I wonder how they are doing, Yi Hao thought as he laid on the bed. Yi Hao was not worried about Cheng Yao Jin and the others. Today, he saw that they had successfully gained the trust of Yi Hao. He was worried about Yu Fei and the other generals. Although each of them was skilled in martial arts, they were all alone. The outside world was still filled with danger. Check the list of characters. Yi Hao Country. Yi, 10th grade kingdom. Identity. Yes, 18th prince strength. Peak martial artist. 100 gene to 200 gene for an ordinary person. 300 gene for a rank 1 martial artist. Skills. Detection. Beginner. Can detect information of characters not higher than the main character by 2 ranks. Beast taming skill. Beginner. Can tame ordinary horses and wild beasts. Archery skill. Beginner. Can shoot from 100 steps away. Resurrection point. 355 soul points. 452 reputation. 467 generals. 21 chefs. 48 subordinates. 9 peak martial artist subordinates. Zhongyang items. 300 sets of armor. City. Level 1 construct. 1 dagger. 10 face change pills. 2 teleportation talismans. 1 general sum of money. 1,270,000 taels of gold. 200,000 taels of silver. 500,000 taels of copper quest. Heart of the Strong SSS. Imperial Dragon leaderboard rank 1 after killing 9 assassins during the day. His soul points had finally reached 3 digits. Sure enough, it was still faster to obtain soul points by killing people. Yi Hao sighed in his heart. It seemed that he had to quickly go out and gain experience. The next morning, Shen Wansan brought people to buy tables and chairs. There was no time to make a plaque, but Yi Hao had a way. He directly asked Zhao Zilong to use a spear to carve the words. Although the craftsmanship was a little rough, Yi Hao wanted the name Flame Yellow Tower. Moreover, Zhao Zilong's handwriting was not bad. At least, Yi Hao believed that it was much better than his own. Very quickly, Lu Xiaofeng brought over another 100 young men and women. Yi Hao gave them some simple training and offered them a salary that was 3 times higher than outside. Naturally, these people were wild with joy. After all, they were working for the Imperial Prince. Many of the slightly good-looking girls kept throwing flirtatious glances at Yi Hao, hoping to attract Yi Hao's attention and climb up the branch to become a phoenix. Yi Hao blushed with shame. He was still a child. Was this really okay? Did you know that you were tempting children to commit crimes? The training only taught them what to do. It was not difficult. Most people could do it. Yi Hao finished teaching them in less than half an hour. At the same time, he also told them some things to take note of, such as that they must greet the guests with a smile. Yi Hao also brought up some management systems from his previous life. There were rewards and punishments, and there were rewards and punishments. After the system was introduced, Shen Wansan looked at Yi Hao in admiration. His master really surprised him. Once the system was introduced, it would be a good way to restrain the staff and motivate them to work hard. Jiuhong Chestnut also looked at Yi Hao's back with a love-struck expression. As it was still early in the afternoon, Yi Hao assigned all the men to buy groceries, while the women went to the streets to advertise. The reputation of Flame Yellow Tower had spread throughout the capital yesterday. Even the emperor wolfed down the dishes. Who would want to try it? Moreover, it was said that all the dishes were new and much better than those of the Ninth Heaven restaurant. However, there was only one Flame Yellow Tower. Those who had money couldn't book a table, and those who didn't have money couldn't afford it. This was the most uncomfortable feeling, but there was no other way. After all, chefs were precious. Otherwise, the Ninth Heaven restaurant wouldn't be so famous. It was because of the good chefs that it was so famous. No matter how expensive the dishes were, there would still be people willing to pay. Brothers, have you heard of Flame Yellow Tower? A few hawkers gathered together and chatted. How could I not have heard of it? I was there yesterday. That aroma, now that I think about it, my mouth is watering. But we don't have the life to eat it. Another hawker said sadly. Haha, you don't know. His Highness the 18th Prince is benevolent. He opened another 5 low-grade Flame Yellow Towers for ordinary people like us. It's said that the taste is only slightly worse than the middle-grade Flame Yellow Tower, but the price is the same as ordinary restaurants. Really? Why would I lie to you? Didn't you see that group of women advertising? Hey, where are you going? I'm going to eat at Flame Yellow Tower. What if I can get a table? Wait for me, I'm going too. Bastard, where did he get so many chefs? After hearing his subordinate's report, the second prince smashed all the porcelain in the room and roared with a ferocious expression. He really couldn't figure out where Yi Hao had found these chefs. Could it be that he had given Yi Hao dozens of shops for nothing and was going to watch him fail? His good mood for the day was ruined in an instant. The guard trembled and knelt on the ground. "Your Highness, please calm down." "No, I can't admit defeat like this." The second prince paced back and forth, unable to vent the anger in his heart. Unwillingly, he looked at the guard kneeling on the ground and asked, "Get up. Why didn't the fifth prince come today again?" "Your Highness, the fifth prince sent someone to say that he's not feeling well." The guard stood up and replied, but he hesitated. "What's wrong? Speak." The second prince shouted impatiently. "I heard that the fifth prince recommended a general to his majesty, and that general has already taken the position of deputy commander of the royal guards." The guard secretly looked at the second prince's expression and told him what he heard. "That bastard, I've always felt that something was wrong with him these days. So that's why." The second prince was so angry that he laughed. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. And, seeing the second prince like this, the guard wanted to leave as soon as possible. However, he didn't dare to leave or speak, as there was still something to report. "And what is it? Tell me everything." The second prince felt that there was nothing else that could hurt him anymore. "Furthermore, the money that you asked the fifth prince to borrow, as well as his own money, were all taken away by the fifth prince. He said that those families have financial problems and needed to get their funds back. We are now left with less than 10 million. The guard said with fear. Chapter 38. Your Highness. The servant rushed forward to support the second prince. "I'm fine. Go get old 7 and old 9. The second prince steadied himself and said anxiously, "Also, get the 3 generals my uncle sent to me. Go now." "Yes, Your Highness." The servant quickly ran out. The second prince knew that he could no longer stay in the palace. Moreover, there was no need for him to compete in the upcoming Imperial Dragon ranking. He had lost his shops, half his funds had been taken away by the fifth prince, and his generals were no match for the fifth prince. He was no match for the first prince. "Just you wait. When I come back, I'll tear you to pieces." The second prince hated Yi Hao the most, but now he was willing to swallow the fifth prince alive and let himself fall into the abyss. He really doesn't understand where the fifth prince got the expert. If the fifth prince didn't get the expert and control the royal army, he would still be a dog by his side. Yi Hao didn't know that his plan to drive a wedge between the fifth prince and the fifth prince had succeeded so quickly. He could only say that Cheng Yaojin was too good at persuasion. With just a few words, the fifth prince was so high up in the sky that he couldn't wait to share a bed with Cheng Yaojin. After Hua Xiong took control of the royal army, the fifth prince had no scruples. Under Cheng Yaojin's guidance, he immediately went to visit the major clans and asked for the second prince's funds back. He completely broke off his relationship with the second prince. On this day, business was so good that it was bursting. Every shop was packed with people. Even the people from the nearby villages and towns rushed over to have a meal in Flame Yellow Tower. Flame Yellow Tower's dishes: Min cuisine, Shandong cuisine, Sichuan cuisine, Cantonese cuisine, Jiangsu cuisine, Zhejiang cuisine, Hunan cuisine, and Anhui cuisine. The next day, Yi Hao didn't slack off either. He changed all the shops that could be changed into restaurants and bought a few more restaurants along the way. In just one day, Yi Hao earned another 200 reputation points. Perhaps it was because of the reputation of the Flaming Emperor Pavilion. At night, Yi Hao spent another 160 resurrection points to summon 160 ordinary people. Half of them were men, and half of them were men. Each of the 8 major cuisines had 20 people. Through the night, the 8 chefs taught them. That night, Yi Hao couldn't sleep at all. At first, he was happy, but later he was depressed. The system notification didn't stop at all. It was almost dawn when the system notification stopped. Fortunately, these people had their own information in their minds. Basically, all of them were considered orphans. Since Yi Hao had taken them in, their lives belonged to Yi Hao. They were not afraid that others would ask about their identities. On the 3rd day, the Flaming Emperor Pavilion opened many more restaurants. The Flaming Emperor Pavilion could be found in every corner of the capital city. Regardless of whether it was a prosperous area or a desolate area, all of them were bursting with customers. This directly caused all the restaurants to lose business. Even a Nine Heavens restaurant was forced to close. Guan Zhendong directly contacted the second prince through Kong Lo. As for what the two were plotting, no one knew. On the fourth day, business was still the same. The Flaming Emperor Pavilion didn't open any more branches, which made Guan Zhendong heave a sigh of relief. So many chefs had appeared out of nowhere. Moreover, he sent people out to investigate. Every Flaming Emperor Pavilion's dishes were good. Moreover, the chefs were all young men and women. There was no problem with their identities. The Flaming Emperor Pavilion was developing too quickly. If it continued to develop, all the restaurants in the Myriad Kingdom continent would be replaced by the Flaming Emperor Pavilion. Therefore, he allied with the second prince to protect his position in the Nine Heavens restaurant. On the third night, the second prince led his subordinates and left the capital city of Yi. At the same time, the seventh prince and the ninth prince left with their loyal subordinates. As for where they went, no one knew. In one night, the fifth prince's limelight was boundless. He had taken over the second prince's position in one leap. What was strange was that the third prince had also left. No one knew why, but this made the officials and the major clans depressed. The Imperial Dragon Rankings competition was approaching. Were the second prince and the third prince going to give up? Now, there were only 4 factions left competing for the Imperial Dragon Rankings. They were Yi Hao, the first prince, the fourth prince, and the fifth prince. The first prince and the fourth prince did not make any moves. On the other hand, the fifth prince was jumping up and down in the capital city. He wandered between the major clans and controlled the Imperial army. He had become the favorite to win the competition. The fifth prince had already announced that he would be the first in the Imperial Dragon Rankings. Yi Hao's reputation had even overshadowed the fifth prince's. In just 3 days, the Flaming Emperor Pavilion had spread all over the capital city. Furthermore, Yi Hao had protected the emperor and fought the 9 assassins. It had become a must-have topic for everyone to talk about. However, most people were still optimistic about the fifth prince. Some people speculated that the second prince had been forced to leave the palace because he was afraid of the fifth prince. In everyone's opinion, the second prince would definitely become the crown prince this year. Even the second prince was afraid of the fifth prince. One could imagine how powerful the fifth prince's trump card was. After dinner, Yi Hao listened to Zhang Yang and Shun Wansan's report. Although Zhang Yang was only a city defense team leader, he was quite well informed. When the second prince and the third prince left the capital city, Zhang Yang immediately reported to Yi Hao. What Yi Hao could not understand was why the second prince left the capital city at such a critical time. The second prince should not be as timid as a mouse. Yi Hao felt that something was wrong, but he could not figure it out. As for the third prince's departure, Lu Fang had secretly reported it to him. As for the reason, the third prince did not tell Lu Fang. Yi Hao felt that his head was about to explode, but he could not figure it out. He shook his head and said, "You said that people from the Qian kingdom came?" "Yes, your highness. They have already entered the palace." Zhang Yang had been waiting quietly for a long time. When he heard Yi Hao's question, he immediately replied, "What are they here for?" Yi Hao frowned. The Qian kingdom was a grade 9 marquisate. Although it was only 1 grade higher than the Yi kingdom, the Yi kingdom was only a vassal of the Qian kingdom. They could receive protection from the Qian kingdom, but they had to pay a huge tribute to the Qian kingdom every year. Similarly, the Zhao kingdom was only a vassal of the Qian kingdom. When other kingdoms fought, the higher-ups would not intervene. The Qian kingdom would only intervene if the vassal kingdoms of other kingdoms attacked. This was also why the Zhao kingdom could declare war on the Yi kingdom. According to Yi Batian, he did not know what benefits the Zhao kingdom had given the Qian kingdom. For the past few years, the Qian kingdom had been focusing on cultivating the Zhao kingdom and suppressing the Yi kingdom. However, the Yi kingdom could only suffer in silence. If they really angered the Qian kingdom would have an excuse to attack, and the Yi kingdom would be destroyed easily. Chapter 39. People from a Qin kingdom came at this time. What good could it be? I heard that they are here to watch the Imperial Dragon ranking competition, Zhang Yang said with uncertainty. After all, these things were not something that a nobody like him could find out. You have done well. Yi Hao did not blame Zhang Yang. I will find a way to promote you. Zhang Yang did a good job. Yi Hao encouraged him. Thank you, Your Highness. Zhang Yang knelt on the ground and thanked him. As expected, the system notification showed that Zhang Yang's loyalty had reached more than 80 points. After Yi Hao let Zhang Yang leave, he checked the account again. Including the previous earnings, he had opened more than a dozen shops in the past few days. However, he had earned more than 500,000 gold coins. Yi Hao calculated the average profit. The daily profit had reached more than 10,000 gold coins. He could win one round on the average ranking. As for the martial arts competition, he could still win. The strongest person here was the Crown Prince, who was only a rank 7 warrior. As long as he did not change the competition method, he would win this round. Yi Hao did not have much hope in the overall wealth ranking. According to the news from Cheng Yaojin, the 5th prince had gotten another 5 million taels of gold from somewhere, adding up to a total of 15 million taels of gold. Even if he sold himself, he would not be able to gather so much money in such a short time. In the talent ranking competition, he had to find 3 subordinates. If he won one round, he would not be defeated. However, there was also a possibility of a tie. If he won 2 rounds, he would be the first in the Imperial Dragon ranking. Yi Hao was very clear on what kind of martial generals his opponent had. The only mid-grade martial general was Hua Xiong, while the rest were all low-grade martial generals. As for asking them to go easy on him, Yi Hao didn't want to do that, as it might expose their identities. Zhao Zilong was a high-ranked general. It was not a problem for him to win the talent ranking competition. Now, he only needed to win one more round. Lu Xiaofeng and the other 9 people were strong enough. However, their fighting skills were not enough. They were only ordinary generals. Even if Cheng Yaojin and the others were low-ranked generals, it was almost impossible for them to defeat Cheng Yaojin and the others. This showed the importance of ranks. Yi Hao thought for a long time. He could only use the resurrection point to summon another general. Host, you still have one more chance to summon a general, the system reminded him. Yeah, I've been too busy these days. I would have forgotten if you hadn't mentioned it. Yi Hao patted the back of his head with his small hand and said happily, Use it. System, please bless me with a high-ranked martial general. No, even if it's a peerless martial general, I don't mind. Yi Hao held his breath, closed his eyes, and prayed with his hands clasped together. Ding dong, congratulations to host for obtaining a high-grade martial general, Qin Xiong. Ha, that's great. My luck has exploded. When Yi Hao heard that he had summoned a high-grade martial general, he opened his eyes and danced with joy. It seemed that the reward for summoning a high-grade martial general was really good. He had summoned high-grade martial generals twice. The first time he had summoned Zhao Yun, and the second time he had summoned Qin Xiong. Yi Hao was not in a hurry to summon Qin Xiong. After all, it was too troublesome to arrange a place for him to stay in the middle of the night. It was better to find an opportunity to summon Qin Xiong again in the morning. After obtaining Qin Xiong, Yi Hao had nothing to worry about for tomorrow's Imperial Dragon list. He immediately lay down on his bed, hugged his blanket, and fell asleep. The next day, Yi Hao woke up early and ran out of the shop without saying goodbye. After a while, under everyone's puzzled eyes, Yi Hao came back, but behind him was a young man. He had a golden helmet on his head, golden armor on his body, and a breastplate on his chest that reflected the light of the morning sun. There were 2 golden swords hanging from his waist, and he held a tiger-headed golden spear in his hand. He had sharp eyebrows and fierce eyes, and he looked very intimidating. He stood behind Yi Hao with a serious expression. Everyone's eyes gathered behind Yi Hao. They wanted to know why Yi Hao had gone out for a while and brought back an expert. Let me introduce everyone. This is Qin Xiong, Qin Shubao. He just came to rely on me. Yi Hao introduced him. You're very strong. Zhao Zilong stared at Qin Xiong and said after a while, You're not bad either. Qin Xiong replied. As soon as Zhao Zilong and Qin Xiong saw each other, They felt a sense of camaraderie. Congratulations, Master. You've gained another fierce general. I wonder if I can spar with Brother Qin? Zhao Zilong congratulated Yi Hao, and at the same time voiced his request. When Yi Hao heard Zhao Zilong's request, he was very tempted. Both of them were high-grade generals, and the battle would be very intense. Although he couldn't fight Qin Xiong yet, he could fight Qin Xiong first. Yi Hao wanted to ask Qin Xiong, but when he turned around, he saw Qin Xiong looking at him with the same desire. Okay, but don't go too far. There's still an important matter today. Yi Hao nodded in agreement. He closed the door of the restaurant and ordered his subordinates to move the tables and chairs aside to make space for the two to spar. Yi Hao led everyone to the second floor to watch. Golden swords and tiger-headed golden spears. They saw. The golden swords at Qin Xiong's waist were already in his hands. They flew out, and with a flash of golden light, it flew toward Zhao Zilong's face. If he was hit, his head would definitely split open and blood would splatter everywhere. Zhao Zilong reacted quickly, and with the courage of Dragon's silver spear in his hand, he deflected the golden swords with one strike. Bang! With a loud sound, the golden swords smashed a large hole in the wall. You two wastrels, go easy on me. Is the wall free? I'm going to deduct your wages, Yi Hao said with heartache. Your Highness, you don't seem to be giving them money either, Jiuhong Chestnut said, embarrassed. When did His Highness become so stingy? Is that so? Yi Hao pretended not to know and rubbed his nose. Aya! Jiuhong Chestnut shouted, and immediately attracted the attention of everyone on the second floor. She immediately lowered her head shyly and thought to herself, Your Highness is so naughty. Let's see if you still dare to expose my shortcomings. Yi Hao snorted proudly, and at the same time, he rubbed his hands together, missing the soft feeling just now. Jiuhong Chestnut's face turned even redder. On the other hand, everyone else looked confused. Downstairs, Zhao Zilong and Qin Xiong had already fought for no less than 10 rounds. Both sides were evenly matched, and their strength was equally matched. You retreat, I attack, I advance, you block. The spears in their hands clashed fiercely. Be careful. Huh. The two figures kept switching positions, and the weapons in their hands turned into two long dragons. One was a golden dragon, and the other was a silver dragon. They kept colliding, and the sound of air breaking was constantly heard. It was a dazzling sight. Quite a few tables and chairs were shattered by their power. Yi Hao was filled with regret. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have let them compete. It seemed that he would have to buy new furniture and renovate the house. But the satisfied smile on his face betrayed him. Chapter 40. All right, stop. Yi Hao stood up and shouted. The two of them had already fought for more than 300 rounds, and there was no clear winner. Yi Hao was afraid that the two of them would lose their patience. No matter which one of them got injured, his heart would ache. After all, when two tigers fought, one of them was bound to get injured. When the two of them heard Yi Hao's words, they immediately put away their weapons. They knew that there was no need to continue the fight. When the time came, no one would be able to gain an advantage. It was not worth it. However, they were too embarrassed to stop. They were afraid that the other party and Yi Hao would look down on them. But when they heard Yi Hao's words, the two of them heaved a sigh of relief and immediately stopped the fight. If you have the chance in the future, you can spar again. But remember not to go overboard, Yi Hao carefully reminded them as he walked down the stairs. Yes, master. The two of them cupped their fists at the same time and looked at each other. They both felt that they had found a confidant. Seeing the two of them like this, Yi Hao was very happy. He was most worried that his subordinates would not get along well. After all, they all had their own thoughts. But now, it seemed that things are going well. Before he could rush for breakfast, Yi Batian sent someone to urge him to enter the palace. Yi Hao could only go hungry and bring Jiuhong Chestnut, Qin Xiong, and Zhao Zilong to the palace. As for the shops, Shen Wansen would take care of them. Lu Xiaofeng and the other 9 stayed behind to patrol the shops. After all, they had just opened and there were still many troublemakers. Although Yi Hao did not know how to ride a horse, he knew how to tame animals. He did not know if it would work, but Yi Hao still tried it. He realized that he had an inexplicable connection with the horse. It was as if he could understand the horse's emotions. Yi Hao sat on the horse's back. The horse did not resist. So Yi Hao pulled Jiuhong Chestnut onto the horse and sat behind him. After all, Yi Hao was not as tall as Jiuhong Chestnut. If Jiuhong Chestnut sat in front of him, he would not be able to see the road. What made Yi Hao feel uncomfortable was that the horse did not have a saddle or stirrups, which made him feel very uncomfortable. He found an excuse and said that he had to go back to his room to get something. Yi Hao spent 30 reputation points to exchange for a saddle and another 20 reputation points to exchange for a pair of stirrups. Under the curious gaze of Qin Xiong and Zhao Yun, Yi Hao spent a long time and finally put on the saddle and stirrups. Master, this is simply a miraculous invention. If it is used in the army, it will greatly increase the combat ability of the cavalry, Zhao Zilong said excitedly as he sat on the saddle. Master, did you invent this? Zhao Zilong had never seen this thing before, but he knew that this thing was definitely a revolutionary invention. Yi Hao's name would be recorded in the annals of Neon Land's history. Moreover, this thing was brought out by Yi Hao, so it must have been invented by Yi Hao. Yi Hao did not say anything, so he took it as a tacit agreement. He could not say that he summoned this thing from the system and did not invent it, right? Moreover, when this thing was popularized, it would earn him a lot of reputation points. The premise was that he had to quickly build a cavalry unit. If he could not let others see this thing, he would try his best to not let others see it. This was because this thing did not require much skill. As long as one had the intention, they could imitate it. Then, his cavalry would not have this advantage. Yi Hao mounted the horse and tried it out. Sure enough, it was much more comfortable than before. At the very least, it did not hit his butt. Moreover, it was much more stable. Fortunately, he had already trained the horse. Moreover, he still remembered bits and pieces of his horsemanship from when he was 6 years old, so he quickly became proficient in riding the horse. As the streets were filled with people in the morning, Yi Hao did not dare to ride too fast. However, they still arrived at the palace very quickly. Yi Hao first brought a few people back to his own palace. A few eunuchs and palace maids were standing there cleaning. When they heard the sound of horse hooves, they immediately came out to welcome them. Greetings, Your Highness. The eunuchs and palace maids bowed respectfully. Who are you? Yi Hao asked. After all, this was his own palace. He had to figure out why so many palace maids and eunuchs suddenly appeared. Your Highness, we were sent by Her Majesty. In the future, we will be responsible for all the chores in Her Majesty's palace, a palace maid said carefully. They were not aware of the situation outside the palace. However, a few days ago, Yi Hao had killed 2 eunuchs. The news had spread throughout the palace. Therefore, when they saw Yi Hao, they were so clean. They were afraid that they would anger Yi Hao and Yi Hao would kill them. Then you may leave. Yi Hao instructed after he understood. At the same time, he handed the horse to the eunuchs and asked them to lead it to the stable. Without any time to rest, he led a few people to the training ground. Fortunately, he remembered the route. Otherwise, it would be troublesome. After a few minutes, Yi Hao finally arrived. Why is there no one here? Jiuhong Chestnut looked at the empty training ground and looked at Yi Hao in confusion. Yi Hao was even more confused. He could only find a place to rest. He wondered if the purple cry Pegasus in the system was faster than the horse he rode today. The horse he rode today was already one of the best horses in the country of Yi. Yi Hao did not want to summon the purple cry Pegasus. After all, they were in the capital city, and there was no shortage of mounts. It would be too troublesome to summon it and feed it. Therefore, it had been abandoned in the system space. Come over. Why isn't Father and the rest here yet? Yi Hao was getting impatient after waiting for a long time. He called a eunuch over and asked. Replying to 18th Highness, His Majesty and the officials are having breakfast with the Qian Kingdom's envoy. It might take a while. The eunuch hurriedly ran to Yi Hao and reported respectfully. You may leave. Yi Hao was very unhappy, but he did not make things difficult for the eunuch. This Qian Kingdom is too arrogant. Jiuhong Chestnut pouted and said angrily, "Sooner or later, I will break into the Qian kingdom's capital." Yi Hao was also very angry. A mere envoy actually needed the entire country of Ye's emperor and civil and military officials to have breakfast with him. Even the Imperial Dragon ranking competition was delayed. In Yi Hao's mind, the Imperial Dragon ranking competition had been a rule in Yi for hundreds of years. It was held every year at the same time. Even if the enemy attacked the country, it would still be held. She hadn't expected that the Imperial Dragon rankings would be delayed because of a few envoys. She didn't know what her father was thinking. Those people were clearly bullying her, yet he was still accompanying them. He should have just killed those damn envoys. Yi Hao's principle was that if others did not offend him, he would not offend them. One needed to be cautious and consider the big picture. However, it did not mean that you could do whatever you wanted. With Yi Hao's personality, even if he could not defeat you, he would risk his life to bite off a piece of your flesh. He needed to have the spirit to drag the emperor down, even if he was willing to be cut into pieces. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.